Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Speaker of the London Borough of Hackney.
Sit down, everyone, please. I'd like to welcome you. Is this working? I'd like to welcome you to this extraordinary council meeting. Not that other meetings aren't extraordinary, but this is particularly extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it's been called to consider granting the honorary Freedom of the Borough to two organisations following their nomination for the award. To welcome Tracy Fletcher, Chief Executive of Homerton University Hospital and Chief Executive of Volunteer Centre Hackney, and their guests. They're in attendance this evening, and we're very pleased to have you with us in the council chamber. Welcome also to two holders of Freedom of the Borough, Lieutenant Colonel Roderick Morris, Hackney's former Deputy Lieutenant, and former Councillor Salim Siddiqui, both of whom are joining us remotely. I understand that the borough's new Deputy Lieutenant, Stephen Howlett, CBEDL, is joining us remotely too, and I'd like to welcome you, Stephen, to your first full council meeting. I'd also like to welcome all those watching the live stream. This meeting is to be conducted in a COVID-safe manner with social distancing observed. While attendees are asked to wear face coverings when moving around the building, they are not required to do so when seated, although they may choose to do so for their own personal comfort. Rule 25.1 of council procedure requires that full council, all councillors must stand and address the meeting through the speaker. Well, you certainly have to address the meeting through the speaker, but we wish to waive that. Could I have a nomination for that, please? Yes, Councillor Odds, can that be seconded? Deputy Mayor Bramble, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. For those councillors not accessing the meeting remotely, a reminder, or those who are accessing the meeting remotely, please bear in mind you won't be counted as present for the purposes of the Local Government Act 1972, and you may not propose or second a motion or vote on any item under consideration. The meeting is scheduled for 30 minutes, and we have a full agenda for the full council afterwards, so I'd request that all contributions are succinct and concise. Right, item 1, apologies for absence. Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I accept what you said about them not being able to vote, etc., but could you please make it clear that they can speak at your discretion?
They can speak at my discretion, as of course can everyone. Apologies for absence. I've had apologies from Councillor Levy, Councillor McMahon, Councillor Mima, Councillor Peters, Councillor Stocks and Councillor Renison. Are there any others?
We've had additional apologies from Councillor
August
Canley, thank you, and also apologies for lateness from Councillor David.
Okay, thank you. I know Councillors Cameron, Chapman, Hayhurst, Joseph, Kenzie, Pluvier, Selman Smith and Spence are joining the meeting remotely, and I welcome them. I always look better in real life than on a screen, but don't worry about that. For those who are joining the meeting remotely, if you wish to speak or comment, please raise your hand in the hand-raising function, and I'll invite you to speak if time permits. Again, reminder, you cannot participate in decisions, but you know that already. Please also refrain from using the chat function, as this is not visible for councillors attending in person or those watching the live stream. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Right, we come now to the important issue, freedom of the borough. I propose the council confer upon Homerton Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust the honorary freedom of the borough. I'd like Mayor Glanville to second the nomination. Would you formally do so?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
And I'll say a few words formally to nominate them. The Mayor will be able to speak in the debate. Homerton Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust has faced unique challenges during the COVID pandemic. It's had to deal with unprecedented levels of ill health, enormous pressure on the intensive care unit, significant demands on staff helping patients recover from long COVID, and organisational difficulties. Despite these challenges, staff from all sections of the Trust, led with dedication and commitment by Chief Executive Tracy Fletcher, have performed above and beyond the call of duty, including doctors, nurses, porters, catering staff, maintenance workers, care workers, cleaners, ancillary staff and volunteers. It's with great sadness that we also remember and pay tribute to the Homerton Hospital staff who tragically lost their lives whilst caring for and protecting their patients with compassion and dedication. As we emerge from the pandemic, we will work to ensure that the sacrifices made by Homerton staff are never forgotten. We are incredibly grateful for the tireless work and dedication of Homerton staff, and we believe that they should be recognised by the Award for Freedom of the Borough. Now, I've had notification that Councillor Hayhurst and Councillor Lynch wish to speak. Councillor Hayhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On health scrutiny, we're often the critical friend of the Homerton, but tonight it's a pleasure to be able to abandon the critical aspect. To me, this award is more about the extraordinary work that Tracy and her colleagues at the Homerton have carried out over the last 18 months. It's about the last 39 years and what the Homerton means to our borough. It's a genuine community hospital, employing our residents where our children were born, caring for our elderly, and where many of us will have memories of being met by acts of kindness as we've anxiously gone for tests or visited loved ones. Built on the site of the former Fever Hospital in 1982, the Homerton is one of Hackney's anchors. And whatever the latest acronym or system restructure swirling around or imposed upon it, the staff at the Homerton managed to tune that out and focus on what matters, namely providing the best patient-centred care. Outstanding CQC rating, the first A&E in the country to be awarded that accolade, year on year, the best A&E wait times, one of the Olympic hospitals, and a hospital that listens. When concerns were raised last year about supporters and security staff not having adequate sick pay, the Homerton listened and took action. There are not many boroughs in London, or indeed local authority areas in the country, that can boast a hospital of their own. And we in Hackney should count ourselves very fortunate. Yeah. Congratulations, Tracy, to all the staff and for doing the borough proud. Long may it continue.
Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll keep it as brief as I can because I know others want to come in and you've already covered a lot in your speech. I'm of course proud to second your nomination for Homerton Hospital to receive Freedom of the Borough. Indeed, in 15 years serving in the Chamber, this is the first time that I've had the honour of doing so, and it's been 6 years since we last conveyed this honour. I think I and we cannot express our gratitude enough for the tireless, life-saving work that Homerton Hospital has done on the front line of the coronavirus pandemic over the last 18 months. We also, as Councillor Hayhurst had said, will have our own pre-pandemic memories of how the hospital has served us in the past. Mr. Speaker, as you have said, this nomination is of course for the Homerton, but it is also for everyone that works there, from the security staff to cleaners, clinicians, and of course the leadership team. It's also a collective Freedom of the Borough nomination for all those in Hackney's health and social care system that support the Homerton and all of its excellent work. Despite the unprecedented challenges they have faced during the pandemic, including significant increases in hospital admissions, they have repeatedly, quickly and safely transformed the way that they deliver services to ensure those in greatest need receive the care, both COVID and non-COVID related. Homerton has also had to deal with enormous pressure on its ICU unit, significant demands on staff, helping patients recover from long COVID, and I know it's seen sector leading in that work, as well as all the organisational challenges of rearranging and reconfiguring the hospital to cope with an emergency. As you said, Mr. Speaker, it's also with great sadness that we pay tribute to the staff from the Homerton and their families who tragically lost their lives. We will never forget them and their commitment and dedication for their patients. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tracy Fletcher for her tireless work and inspirational leadership as Homerton's Chief Executive during what has been the most challenging period in NHS history. Her informal catch-ups have also been the highlight of my time as Mayor during this partnership. As you've said, you've named many of the people that work at the Homerton, and I know that Tracy would agree that everyone contributes to this effort. I'm also looking forward to hearing from Barbara Freya, a ward manager from Lamb Ward, who's been at the front line of the COVID response. The Homerton means so much more to us than just a hospital, as Councillor Hayhurst has said. It's a community space, it represents art, culture, a true community hub, and it is also culturally competent, serving some of the most diverse communities in the borough. It's at the cutting edge of everything from HIV to TB, an amazing A&E unit and maternity facilities, and looking after some of the most vulnerable new babies that get born into the world. It also has a tremendous energy and spirit of camaraderie. I don't know how many social media accounts the Homerton and its different services have, but you can just watch the energy and passion that everyone that works there has for their job and also for each other. And I think it's a completely wonderful way of an organisation letting go and explaining what it's like to work in a large institution. From more recently, we've also seen the Homerton lead the vaccine effort, supporting health and social care staff across the system, and also with Catherine Pelly leading the vaccine effort at the HSC a couple of weeks ago. We know that they're now facing a third wave and increasing admissions around COVID, and that they will face deeper challenges to come. But thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your nomination, and I hope that the Council will grant a collective freedom of the borough to the Homerton this evening.
Thank you, Meg Glanville. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm talking on behalf of myself and Deputy Mayor Guy Nicholson and Councillor Rob Chapman as the three ward councillors in Homerton Ward, which the clues in the name, Homerton Hospital sits in there. I think actually Ben and Mayor Glanville have actually, I'm sitting here crossing off because most of the stuff they've said already, but I think what I wanted to say, for those that know professionally, I'm a nurse as well and have worked in the NHS, is that actually the Homerton is the epitome of the NHS, and to steal a well-known phrase, it really does care for people of Hackney from cradle to grave, and as many have said tonight already, we all know, have experienced the great care that the Homerton has. I just wanted to also just echo what Ben said around the Homerton in terms of the heavy lifting that's been done in previously. I would be told off because I have the absolute honour to work with her now, but there's been some excellent chief nurses, Sheila Adams in the past, the work that some of our councillors have done, Jonathan McShane and Ferrier Clark, and now obviously Ben, the work he does with scrutiny, and we've obviously Councillor Kennedy as well as the lead member, because I think the reason why we have done so well and did respond so well to what happened with the COVID pandemic is this great partnership and relationship that we have within local government and within the NHS community in Hackney. And I think they have stood out as a beacon, not just in London, but when in my professional life, when people talk to me, they all say, gosh, why is the Homerton so good? When you look at the borough that the Homerton looks in, work is sat in within the associated challenges we have with the socioeconomic things that determine usually poor health outcomes. And I've said, essentially, it's a local hospital for local people. It embraces the community. It employs people within Hackney as well. And it absolutely wraps its arms around the people of Hackney, not just during COVID, but all the time. And I just think that I would like to say, and I'm sure Mayor Glanville and Councillor Kennedy and the rest of the chamber would say that as we go forward, we will absolutely have a commitment to wrapping our arms around the Homerton as well. And it's just absolute great pleasure. And I just want to say I feel quite tearful because Barbara's here as the ward manager, and I've done that role, and it's really hard. And I know you've probably had some challenging times, and we know as well that going forward there might be some dark times as well. But we're all here for you, and yeah, we love you all very much, and congratulations on the award.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I must apologise for forgetting to declare an interest. 33 years ago today by the Jewish calendar, my daughter was born by emergency cesarean section in the Homerton because she had a cord around her neck. If it hadn't been for the amazing care from the medical and the clinical and other staff there, we would not be able to celebrate her 33rd birthday today. So even though it's not a pecuniary interest, I declare that as an interest. Everything that I needed to say has been said. However, I find this award somewhat superfluous. It's an award that should be given to an individual. At least with the George Cross, Her Majesty had the President of Malta. And I think the more important award was today's government's announcement of the 3% pay rise, which is more than deserved. In fact, I think they should have overruled the pay board and made it even higher. But that's a matter of personal opinion. Nevertheless, I can't find it within myself to oppose this, and I will support this award, even though, as I say, I find it somewhat superfluous. All my tributes to all those who work and support the hospital, including the volunteers.
Thank you, Councillor Odds. I'm afraid we're running out of time, but you'll have a chance with the other nomination. Can we put this to the vote? Those in favour of granting freedom to Homerton University Hospital?
Agreed.
Anyone against? That is agreed. I'd like to invite Tracy to say a few words. Would you care to come up to the lectern and just... Yes, it's in the middle there. This one's just... Yeah.
See on screen.
That's fine, thank you.
So, unusually for me, I feel quite speechless actually, and actually quite emotional. It's very humbling to hear all of those things being said about the organisation. I don't really like my name being associated with it. There's over 4,000 people who work within the organisation. There's more who work within the City and Hackney system. And people like Borough, who's come with me today, really do make the care of Homerton work. I mean, I have a very privileged position. I sit in a very large office in a building on the site, but there are people who are going into patients' homes, into residents' homes. There are people like Barbara who are looking after incredibly sick people with strong infections before we got the vaccination and putting themselves and their families at risk. And so I know what you're saying about the award, but I really wish that all 4,000 people in the organisation could have heard what was said today. And this is not a speech I was going to say, but it's in response to what has been said. You actually said much of what I was going to say. I wish that people heard those words, because I think those words would have meant more than just the award itself. And I, on behalf of everybody in the hospital and everybody in the system, I'm really, really grateful for them, and I hope that we can continue to do, as Councillor Hager pointed out, what we have been doing for many, many years, and I'm just carrying the baton for the years I've got the baton. And people have carried it before me, and there are many, many people who have worked in the Homerton to get it into the position that it is in now, in such a good position that we could get through the last year and a half in the way that we did do. That doesn't come overnight, that comes after years and years of work. And people like Barbara, who've been in the Homerton for probably as long as I've been in the Homerton, have been working at that for years and years. So thank you very much. And yeah, I think it's the first time I've actually felt really quite emotional about saying what people said.
That was very well said, and we are recording this on YouTube, so I expect the viewing figures to go up by 4,000. Right, we now move to the Volunteer Centre at Hackney. I'd like to ask Councillor Williams to propose the nomination.
I'm delighted and honoured, sorry, I'll take my mask off. I'm delighted and honoured to nominate Volunteer Centre Hackney for Freedom of the Borough. Hackney is a brilliant place that is today thanks to organisations like Volunteer Centre Hackney, who've been working tirelessly throughout the pandemic and over the years to help residents give their time to causes that matter to them and to support voluntary and community sector organisations and mutual aid groups. Despite all the unprecedented challenges that have come with the coronavirus pandemic, Volunteer Centre Hackney has remained committed to helping others. Their response to the coronavirus pandemic has been humbling, and it has saved lives and helped to take the strain off the NHS and other key services that we rely on. This work includes recruiting and training and deploying over 1,000 volunteers to areas where they're most needed and delivering around 1,500 food packages during the first lockdown. Training and supporting 120 local volunteers and frontline workers as part of the Public Health Community Champions programme alongside HCBS and Hackney and City Public Health, providing an essential life-saving service to vulnerable people by ensuring shielding residents received their prescriptions that they needed through their delivery service, supporting more than 1,700 prescriptions being delivered with 44 local pharmacies. Since the vaccine rollout, 850 vaccine volunteers have signed up to cover all shifts throughout the day at vaccine sites across the borough, supporting 96 local community organisations, including the borough's 20 mutual aid groups, grassroots organisations and charities to enable them to grow and develop their own talent and expertise while continuing to deliver their own direct volunteering projects, supporting the launch and growth of projects and promoting community cohesion by bringing people together to support each other, including many people who have never considered volunteering before. Volunteer Centre Hackney has also contributed to the wider voluntary sector in Hackney to ensure that it continues to thrive in a challenging COVID environment and to equip volunteers as they build a better Hackney. None of this could have been achieved. None of what we have achieved as a borough could have happened without their tireless work to coordinate this superhuman effort from volunteers, council workers, voluntary and community organisations over the past 16 months. As long-term partners of VCH, we remain inspired by their ability to rapidly adapt to meet the needs of the organisations and volunteers that they support. They embody Hackney's inclusive, ambitious and cohesive spirit, and it's organisations like Volunteers Hackney that make me proud to be a representative of our wonderful community-focused borough. I'd like to take this opportunity to give huge thanks to Lauren Tobias and everyone at Volunteer Centre Hackney for the work that they do every single day to ensure that some of the most vulnerable people in our communities get the support that they need.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Mayor Glanville, would you like to second this?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Absolutely, and I think Tracy's reaction shows just why these nominations this evening are so important and what they mean to the organisation. So I'm very happy to second the nomination for Volunteer Centre Hackney. And again, while this is for a named organisation, I think it represents something far more. It's a collective award for every formal or informal volunteer in Hackney that stepped up and gave back to their community during the pandemic. VCH Hackney, as Councillor Williams has said, has always been a long-term partner of the council. And over many years, it's worked tirelessly to support our residents, voluntary and community sector organisations, frontline services, and Hackney's diverse communities. But if we go back to those first weekends of lockdown, and certainly as a ward councillor and resident, I remember suddenly seeing mutual aid groups growing up across the borough. How would we respond as a council, as political leaders, and what network would we anchor that mutual aid work in? And because of the work of people like Sonia Khan, the people in the council, and the partnerships we already had with VCH Hackney, we were able to come up with a model that allowed people to absolutely tap into that response and join that volunteer army out in our communities. So 1,000 volunteers through Hackney's Volunteer Hub, DBS checked, and then placed where they were needed the most. And they ensured that vulnerable residents beyond our own support were able to shield in safety, receive the vital medication they need, and more recently, the incredible work around befriending that I know Lauren is so passionate about. I cannot imagine how the resilience of the organisation and the constant different changes and reconfigurations they've had to go through have been managed within VCH Hackney. They've adapted so rapidly to every single stage of the pandemic. So I'd like to say a huge thanks to Lauren Tobias, all of her team at Volunteer Centre Hackney, the staff, the established voluntary and community organisations, those new mutual aid groups, and everyone that was part of that self-coordinated support. I've been on many judging panels with Lauren, and so it's an absolute honour to be able to be part of presenting her with an award. I'd also like to say there's a huge amount of strategic development that happens around everything we do around the voluntary sector. And Lauren has been one of those consistent people involved in every PCA and community conversation I've seen, every strategy development, every summit, every bit of Ageing Well. She's always been there representing and advocating for formal and informal volunteers in our efforts and thinking about how we rebuild a better Hackney using that Hackney spirit coming out of the crisis. I'm absolutely honoured to be a volunteer as well, like many in this chamber, through the Hackney Vax Pack, and I've seen the incredible contribution they have made to reassuring and keeping our vaccine centres safe and staffed through the pandemic. I know time is short, Mr. Speaker, so again, thank VCH Hackney for all that they do, and they're an incredibly worthy second nominee tonight for Honorary Freedom of the Borough.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Glanville. That was very succinct, concise, and to the point. And we now come to a show of hands. Can we see those in favour of the nomination? Any against? That is agreed universally. Can I ask now for the centre, for Lauren to come up and say a few words of acceptance?
Mr. Speaker, Mayor Glanville, councillors, thank you so much for this award. It's a real honour considering all the other amazing charities that we have in this borough, particularly standing alongside Homerton Hospital, considering what they do. To have a volunteer centre having been around for 23 years, I feel like this is recognition of everything that they've achieved over all that time for volunteering. So for me, my staff, but all the staff that went before my predecessors. I'm incredibly lucky to have such a brilliant team of staff who are all so committed to volunteering and helping people to be the best that they can be. They always go the extra mile, and so many of them continue to work and did work 60-hour weeks, just as I know all of you did as well. And it's certainly not for the salaries that we pay them. I also want to say thank you to Hackney Council just for the long-standing partnership and support that we've always had, in particular for people who work in the council like Claire, Whitney, Sonia, Councillor Williams, and of course during COVID, the helpline team led by Kate Rignall and other people as well, such as Lisa Rainhunt. They're all amazing. But I really want to say this award is really a recognition of volunteering and its importance, which I know Hackney Council has always recognised. As nearly all of you, or most of you, are here in a volunteering capacity, or of course become volunteers in order to get here. And I've just heard that 14 councillors are going to be volunteering on Saturday at Buckingham Street to do vaccines. All of you know the benefits of volunteering. Being connected, having a sense of purpose. For people that volunteered during the pandemic that actually answered our survey, 86% of them said they felt more connected to their community and that they felt a greater sense of well-being and improvement of mental health. Which is why we also have supported volunteering projects for people with mental health issues, which has been recognised by City and Hackney CCG. But it's also very hard work. I'm sure, as again you all know, volunteering is also like a silent army. It's often go unrecognised unless you happen to be wearing a branded t-shirt. You work long hours, standing outside in the freezing cold, and that includes people who are standing at a pitch, a football pitch, to look after their kids' amateur football team. Or whether you're actually, standing outside the vaccine site, freezing cold as so many of you did in January, or whether it's what is considered to be the boring stuff, which is in an office inputting data, or the long hours of fundraising. And COVID was no different. So we saw an outpouring of support with 2,000 people sign up in just a few weeks. And that doesn't include the hundreds and hundreds of people who signed up through the mutual aid groups, or on the NHS website, or just helping out their neighbours. As we know, as kind of, people just delivered prescriptions, which actually by the end of the year counted up to 11,740. And that doesn't include all the prescriptions that the mutual aid volunteers delivered as well. The befriending, the online arts and crafts groups. We've had befrienders who actually help people to read. One of my staff actually delivered phonics books to one of our befrienders to do together. We had befrienders doing behind the scenes work, like doing gardening groups, online yoga, an online Zumba class, and of course all the delivery drivers and logistical support that was provided, not just by our volunteers, but all the people who were food providers across the borough. The volunteering is multifaceted. They're all the volunteers, it's got to be said, who are already volunteering with their communities, who weren't perhaps seen and who weren't new, and who already do, or continue to do so, such as those who help out their local synagogue, their church, tenants and residents associations, who maybe don't even see themselves as volunteers. And so many are not so visible in leaflets and flyers, yet are often the ones who are on the ground just doing what's needed. People have always come together to set up their own projects, such as a reading group or a friendship group, like just some of the groups we've been. For me, it's all volunteering. It's people coming together to help others. It's being able to do the best of themselves, to share with other people, to solve problems. Often, the solutions that they themselves know best how to deliver. And it's all of us doing what we can to help make that happen. So I really think this award is also a celebration of the investment that we all do, that Hackney Council has always given, to help support volunteering and to celebrate that. And that includes all the charities who spend a lot of time supporting volunteers to help prepare for them to come and make them feel engaged and rewarded. So we've had so many volunteers tell us that volunteering has actually helped save their lives. But I'll finish with one quote that we got from a volunteer during COVID. My sector suffered and I'm financially poorer, but I'm definitely richer for getting involved.
Lauren, just stay there just one moment. Could present Lauren with the scroll, please. Well done, thank you very much. Business of the extraordinary meeting. I'd like to thank you for your attendance and all the contributions. Special thanks, of course, to the Chief Executive, Homerton Healthcare NHS Foundation Trust and Volunteer Centre Hackney for attending, and most importantly, for the valued and important services rendered to the borough. I now declare the meeting closed. However, I'd like to request members remain seated as the full council meeting will commence imminently. Are we leaving or are we staying? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Hackney Town Hall. I'd like to welcome the two honorary freemen of the borough and the two new ones who are just leaving, actually. Colonel Morris and former Councillor Salim Siddiqui, who are watching online. The meeting is being conducted in a COVID-safe manner with social distancing. Attendees are asked to wear face coverings when moving around the building, but not required to do so when seated. Rule 25.1, which you may have heard me refer to before, needs to be suspended. Can I have a nomination for that? Mayor Glanville, a seconder? Is that agreed? That's Deputy Mayor Bramble. For those councillors accessing the meeting remotely, a reminder that you're not counted as being present for purposes of the Local Government Act 1972 and may not propose or second a motion or vote on any item under consideration. We have a full agenda tonight, so I'd remind you all to be succinct and concise and adhere to the timeframes so far as is possible. Apologies for absence received from Councillors Levy, McMahon, Mima, Peters, Stopps, Renison. Are there any other apologies? No? Councillors Cameron, Chapman, Hayhurst, Joseph, Mackenzie, Pluvier, Selman, Smith and Spence are joining the meeting remotely, and I welcome them. If you wish to speak and you're part of the remote gathering, please use the raise hand function. Please refrain from using the chat function since it's not visible and councillors attending won't see what you've said. Now, I've got a few announcements which we'll rattle through because we want to finish on time. Firstly, I was very sad to learn of the untimely death of Jono Coleman, who was a highly regarded DJ and radio presenter who was born in Hackney in 1956. He spent a significant amount of time in Australia, where he died at the very young age of 65 on the 9th of July. On a happier note, as members will know, the brand new Britannia Leisure Centre opened on June the 30th, and to mark the opening, under 16s will get unlimited flume and leisure pool visits this summer, and it's well worth a visit, and I'll certainly be going there with my godson, hopefully in the next week. Now, members may have noticed, unfortunately, the large Barclays Bank opposite the town hall closed on the 2nd of July, which is pretty shocking. HSBC in Hackney had also closed. This is all very disappointing, and it's something members may wish to take up. There is a Santander branch and a NatWest branch in the centre of Hackney, but no Lloyds branch anywhere. I think it's very important our residents have access to financial services, so it may be something you wish to consider. With the significant increase in COVID infection, it's difficult finalising my programme as speaker, but a number of events are planned. On Sunday, the 15th of August, a number of highly proficient cyclists, we're all of course recyclists, but these are cyclists, they'll cycle in their own time down to Brighton to raise money for St Joseph's and the Hackney Empire. And those are the charities I'm supporting this year. This is really only for cyclists who feel they can go on such a journey, but entries are still open, and of course you are all very welcome to sponsor them. The following week, on the 22nd of August, we're holding a charity football match at Hackney Marshes between Hackney women and an invited team. There'll also be some competitions before the game, including hit the crossbar, free kicks, and penalty taking, which the England football team have been invited to join us in. I'm trying to engage each council directorate in team building and fundraising as well. And as you'll be aware, many staff have been working from home and have hardly seen colleagues in recent weeks. I'm pleased to say the first of these team building exercises and fundraising will take place on Wednesday, the 15th of September at St Joseph's. Some housing staff will combine to build a Lego house. I'm sure to a very high standard. We do need to borrow some Lego sets. So if you or your families have any Lego sets that you can lend us, please let me know. In the early autumn, there'll be a dinner at Yum Yums in Stoke Newington, attended by some of the chain gang. And as some of you know, we're working with the GLA and the London Mayors Association and others on a project to find a new song for London, which would be performed as a short segment during the pantomime at the Empire. This particular event does need sponsorship. So if you know any businesses who'd like to make a contribution to London's musical future, please let me know. You all have contacts, and we also need raffle prizes. You have lots of contacts in the very trendy parts of Hackney that I hardly ever go to. In fact, some of you may even be Hackney hipsters for all I know. But if you do know of anyone who's able to donate a raffle prize or sponsor an event, please let me know. Finally, I'm pleased to say that Union Development have agreed to sponsor Yum Yum's dinner in Stoke Newington, which is very helpful and will assist towards the funds we're seeking to raise for St Joseph's and Hackney Empire. And that concludes my announcements. Right, item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No? Item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree the minutes of the meeting held on 30th of June 2021 as a true and accurate record of proceedings? Councillor Steinberger.
This one? Okay, can you hear me, Mr. Speaker?
We can always hear you, Councillor Steinberger.
Thank you. Okay, page 19. Just one not accurate thing which states here. I actually spoke about No access to the LTNs, because there's roads which are closed with bars, so nobody can drive through those. So that's missing there. And the second point is, we had, after we spoke about David Abney, Councillor Tapia spoke. There's nothing here about what he spoke. I'm just wondering why.
All right. We'll look into that and see if we can amend them. Are the minutes agreed? Thank you. Right, we now come to the Mayor's Civic Awards. I'd like to hand over to Mayor Glam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think from the freedom of the borough announcements earlier to tonight's Mayor's Civic Awards, I think it's really important we recognise that for the first time, I think in a long time, this chamber hasn't been about us, but it's been about our communities that we serve and their contributions. And we know what a brilliant and inclusive and welcoming borough it is, but it is only that place because of the unsung heroes that go that extra mile to support their communities. These awards, Mr. Speaker, were founded by my predecessor, former Mayor Pipe, to help celebrate Hackney civic heroes, not only giving them the much-deserved recognition of their efforts, but also, hopefully, crucially, inspiring more people to get involved and make that lasting difference to the borough that Lauren spoke so powerfully about earlier. Hackney's community spirit, as we've already heard tonight, has shone through in our response to coronavirus. It's been humbling and across the board has no doubt saved lives. Last year, sadly, in the first wave and during lockdown, we had to postpone the awards. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm really pleased we were able to bring them back tonight, and not only bringing them back, but doubling the number and reach of the awards by opening it up not just to individuals, but also organisations. And while this isn't quite the AGM and the associated opportunities to celebrate, Mr. Speaker, I hope that we will be able to bring back the award winners in person for reception in one of our respective parlours in the future. I would like to thank my fellow judges, Yefima Chakwu from Femstar Youth and Woodbury Aid, another tremendous voluntary sector organisation that's contributed so much and would be very deserving of their own award, and I hope they'll be nominated in the future. Colin Allen from Hackney Quest, again an incredible organisation that contributed so much to our borough and its response, and Holly Chant from the Hackney Gazette, who has written about so many of the different contributions that Hackney organisations and volunteers have done over the years. I'd also like to thank Dr. Ronks and Ramsey, the former editor of the Hackney Gazette and latterly of the Huffington Post, for their contributions as sponsors of these awards in the past and former judges. We had an incredibly difficult task and an amazing set of people nominated, and I'd like to thank everyone that took part in the nomination process, and also those that were nominated themselves. We had to pick those 6 winners, and tonight we'll recognise and celebrate some of the wonderful people and organisations within the borough and take pride in the amazing things that they do and achieve every day. The first award, Mr. Speaker, goes to Michelle Dornelli. Michelle has helped and supported Hackney's communities for over 3 decades with her charity Children with Voices. It worked to fight holiday hunger, tackle child poverty and food poverty, and support families in need. And I knew her from her work in and around Homerton before the pandemic. But during the pandemic, Michelle and her organisation and volunteers and staff went above and beyond to help those in need, including running 5 food hubs across the borough, providing food to 600 people per week, amounting to over 70,000 different items of food since last March, doing for older people, families in need, homeless hostels and nursing homes. She also made sure that they delivered Christmas hampers to families and young people and older people, with a special focus on sensory toy boxes for children with special educational needs. As well as providing food to people in need, she has organised people using the food hubs to get additional help, plugged into our wider collective humanitarian response, and ensured as well that there's one-on-one support from local career and welfare experts. She has been described as a true hero and someone that is a joy to be around. It is Michelle's dedication, compassion and tireless work that inspires those around her and makes her a true unsung hero for Hackney. So I hope, Michelle, that you'll have a few words online and one day we'll be able to celebrate in person. Over to you, Michelle.
Okay. First and foremost, I am flabbergasted at getting this award. I'm proud to get it. We've worked really hard. Even today, I've just come from the hub in Gascoigne, so I had to rush and get dressed. It's our pleasure to, I don't know, sacrifice ourselves for the community. It means a lot for us. There's a lot of people that need our support and help. It's a pleasure to get up in the morning to run these hubs. We've actually run 11 hubs since COVID. So we've done the pop-up hubs around Hackney. So we've made sure we've tried to do outreach as well. Obviously, the main focus is us getting our building, because I get food every single day, and getting a building would be amazing. It would mean us sort of like having one point where we can store stuff and we can run things every single day. So I just would like to say thank you to all my volunteers. They have been amazing. The COVID has, there's some positives with the COVID. It's enabled us to mix with people that we would never, ever mix with. The diversity, the professionals, the unprofessionals. It's just been amazing, the amount of people that have come to volunteer. The community are amazing. When we ask for donations, we're getting everything that we need. So I love what we do. I love Hackney. I'm born and bred here, and I will continue to do the best I possibly can with the help of my volunteers. So thank you very much, and I hope that the council can help us find the building that we need. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Michelle, for those powerful words. And we'll obviously come back together to look at the wider needs. So I know that Sonia Khan and the team know that you've been looking for that building, and I hope we can succeed in giving you a more permanent base in the future. Mr. Speaker, the second person we're recognising tonight has gone above and beyond to support young people from across Hackney through the pandemic and over the years. And like you, Mr. Speaker, Alfred Magabo is a big fan of grassroots sport. He's the head coach of grassroots football club Impact Football Academy, which supports children from all backgrounds and abilities between the ages of 5 and 15. He's worked tirelessly to provide much needed support and companionship for young people during what has been a very isolating and confusing time for them. He's hosted weekly events such as quizzes, training, meditation sessions. He's phoned young people he supports to check that they're doing okay. And again, just like Michelle at Christmas, delivered packages, hats, football kits to young people across Hackney to celebrate the festive period. He's a true role model for young people, and he again embodies Hackney's inclusive and welcoming community spirit. And I know he's been making sure that our parks, and especially Haggerston Park, receive this work. And I'm very proud to give the award to Alfred and ask him to say a few words.
Hello, thank you so much for this award. I just lost for words really. When the email came through, I thought it was, what kind of fraud is this? I didn't understand it, didn't really. But yeah, thank you so much. I'd like to thank my team as well, Jonathan, Shania, and all the guys at Impact who have really been going above and beyond for these children. We always say the best way of taking care of tomorrow is taking care of the youth today. And these young people have been so brave, so resilient during this period, tough period. And only they know, in the future what it will bring for them. But they have been so vigilant in this, and seeing that firsthand has been amazing. So for us to do our bit and try to support them as well was absolutely our pleasure. Not also forgetting the parents who have been incredible for them as well, and all the guardians and the support that has been going in, for these young people. But we are very at Impact, very privileged because I don't receive this award as an individual. It's totally impossible for me to be doing all the stuff that happened, or all the deliveries, and all be there for the young people. So I'm receiving this award on behalf of Impact and all those behind the scenes who've made it possible. We've recently as well worked with the council to now engage young female footballers, and we're currently now working on that and working to get some funding to build that up. In the first 3 weeks of doing it, we've had over 60 young female footballers come, so we're hoping to continue to grow that and continue to push female football as well as all the other bits as well. But we'd really like to say a big, massive thank you. I'm very honoured and very shocked as well. But yeah, thank you from Impact, and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you again to Alfred and Impact. And I look forward, I hope, to maybe joining you, Mr. Speaker, to see the teams in action. The third community hero in the individuals category is Alain Chalmers. She's worked tirelessly to prepare and deliver healthy cooked meals and generous food parcels to people in need for a community food hub, Put It In Your Bag. Using her catering connections, and she's one of those that I think Lauren talked about, somebody that's come out of a sector in terms of hospitality and food and beverage that has been hit really hard by the pandemic. And she used her connections and her contacts and her experience to source fresh fruit and vegetables, alongside running a successful social media campaign to solicit further donations from local people. Her selfless dedication to helping others during this incredibly difficult time is nothing short of inspirational, and she's rightly also been hailed as a local hero. And I know that when we were judging this, her reputation across the food network more broadly in Hackney, that we touched on when Lauren was speaking earlier, and that is at the heart of everything that we've been doing in our food hubs, that Alain is somebody that they all know within that network, and we're really supportive of her winning tonight. So I hope that Alain, like Alfred before him, is available to speak and say a few words.
Good evening. Would you?
Online, they've been profiled in The Guardian, they've been working with academic partners, and they've still crucially been doing that day job of being housing managers for their tenants and leaseholders. They joined in an online celebration for the 50th anniversary of Bangladesh's independence this year, and I know that we want to host them to hold an event to celebrate that momentous occasion in the town hall when it's safe to do so. They've also made direct phone calls to their residents and clients, produced 3 videos in Sylheti, the most commonly spoken dialect in Hackney and town hamlets of our Bangladeshi communities, and most recently, they helped support the joint vaccine event on Morningside Estate. There is no doubt that through their tireless work to get vital messaging out to local Bangladeshi communities, they will have saved lives, and we're incredibly honoured to present them with this award this evening, and hope that we'll be able to hear from Bashir, and then we'll go back to Alain if possible.
I'd like to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. When it became apparent following the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic last year that the BME communities, and particularly the Bangladeshi communities, were most disproportionately impacted, and the death rate being 2 to 3 times higher in these communities than the white community, we felt we needed to do something urgently to help our communities during this extraordinary time. With support from the BME London landlords, the 8th Region Foundation, and many other local community organizations, and a grant from the National Lottery, we quickly set up the Bangla COVID-19 Advice Project, BCAP. Our staff, community advisors, and the network of volunteers have worked tirelessly during the pandemic to get the public health message across, including the take-up of the vaccine, reaching out to over 40,000 Bangladeshi residents in Hackney and Tower Hamlets. We've done this by delivering translated leaflets and posters to residents' homes, mosques, community centers, schools, and doctor surgeries. We made direct phone calls to our residents and clients, produced 3 videos in Sylheti, the most commonly spoken dialect in Hackney and Tower Hamlets. We sent out the videos and leaflets through community network, partner organizations, websites, and social media platforms like WhatsApp, Twitter, and Facebook. Bangladesh press and electronic media and community TV channels also helped us to get the message across. Now, everyone at Bangla Housing, and all those associated with the BCAP project, including our dedicated workers and volunteers, will be excited and inspired us by this prestigious award and recognition of our work. I would like to dedicate this award to the Bangladeshi and other communities for all the hardship they have endured during the pandemic. My sincere thanks to the Mayor, Hackney Volunteer Centre, Hackney Public Health Team, BME London Landlords, 8th Region Foundation, and all the organizations and individuals who have helped us support us with our work. I must thank the National Lottery for giving us the grant to deliver this life-saving project. Our work will continue until this horrific pandemic has been fully suppressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alain, are you online? Are you able to say a few words? Elaine, I did see you before. Is Elaine there?
I think she's gone.
No, maybe she's gone. All right, Mayor Glanville, do you want to move on to the next one?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The next organisation is E5 Baby Bank. They have been providing tireless support to parents in need throughout this difficult time, and I think your team is on the call, and we'll hear from her shortly. E5 Baby Bank was set up last summer to provide struggling families with clean clothes, toys, nappies, and other essential items. They've supported hundreds of vulnerable families from across Hackney and surrounding boroughs, including domestic abuse survivors, migrant families, homeless women and children, and families facing financial hardship. They brought together an army of volunteers, most of whom are local mums, to help sort, pack and deliver items, many of which are donated by the local community. They've received lots of nominations from parents who are incredibly grateful for the support of E5 Baby Bank through this difficult time. And I also know how important E5 Baby Bank has been across mutual aid groups. And even this morning, I saw in the Debogwa and Dalston groups posts about E5 Baby Bank. And I know that Lochner Estate are doing a collection for them in Debogwa M1 this weekend. So if you're inspired by what you're about to hear and this worthy award, please do drop by Lochner and make further donations. It's an incredibly deserving organisation.
Go ahead, we can see you.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you very much. It's a great delight and an honor because we are just 1 year, and it's a wonderful birthday gift. And really, it was born because of Jane Lavelle from Bombardee Shortage Trust was crying out for help during the first wave where all the shops were closed, families were struggling to find clothes. She alone was working hard trying to wash and clean and deliver. And she called me because we in the church had a very small donation was supporting family. We were not doing anything of big scale. And she said, look, can you help? Your church is empty. And we were doing visors at that time. And we said, why not? Because we were already helping with some food and I saw kids coming in, but I never thought of it as a big project. It was just, okay, we will just do it as a pop-up. So Jane, together with a few other organizations came together, the church. I want to thank the incredible work of the pastor, the leaders. They said, okay, the church is open. And we partnered with the community and there you go, E5 Baby Bank. We are more than a baby bank. We are a family bank even today. Incredible. We are now partnered with DWP. We are partnered with Homerton Hospitals, social workers. And it's just growing. Every one of them, their story matters to us. It's not a number. And the beautiful thing is the community. It's just amazing. All of our volunteers are professionals, from lawyers, doctors, teachers. The amount of creativity that they bring to this bank is amazing. And so we've grown so fast. We became a charity so fast. And we've helped over 1,500. And even today, we even deliver furniture, microwaves. Today, called from a health visitor, a mother after domestic violence goes home. The husband has ransacked and removed everything, and she finds herself with nothing, calls us, and we've got the microwave, everything that was donated, gone within 24 hours to a family. And I think that's what it talks about, a community spirit. So I would just want to thank all my volunteers, accept this wonderful award for the amazing work, the volunteers, the church members, the pastors who do delivery day and night, even in the evenings after 10, they are going for emergencies. So I just want to thank, and it was no more pop-up. We are going to be changed to be called Hackney Family Baby Bank, because we've got such a wide amount of families to help. And we only have one issue, as what Michelle said, looking for a building. The church is opening up. We have got big grounds on the church where the Potter cabins were meant to come, but everything is stalled. And so we hope, Hackney Council, you can do something to help the E5 Baby Bank achieve its dream of getting a home where this award can be a reality in people's lives. I'm a trained nurse, and we are not afraid of hard work. Together with my volunteers, we just hope and pray that we will get a home for the E5 Baby Bank. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I know that I got an update on some of the planning issues that are impacting on E5 Baby Bank early today, so I hope that we can follow up the plea that the team made at the end there. It's really exciting to hear about their renaming and the work that they're doing with Bump Buddies, which is one of the really important organisations that are part of the Shoreditch Trust family. Last but not least is the Round Chapel Old School Rooms. It's a vibrant community hub and church in Clapton, which has provided essential services for its local communities for many years through a community nursery, family support services, adult social care services, advice services, fun clubs, community meals, homelessness outreach, working hostels, political activism, and so very much more. During the pandemic, Round Chapel Old School Rooms has gone above and beyond to support its community, both physically and emotionally, including through delivering food parcels to residents in need and coordinating a network of trained volunteers who provided practical and emotional support to over 40 families and the isolated and vulnerable residents. And I think one of the most important principles of old school rooms is that they don't just provide aid, they empower the people receiving it to be able to take ownership of the issues that they're facing and respond and build training capacity and resilience in our community. I was absolutely honoured to say in their annual report this year, the pandemic has shone a spotlight on the vital work of a community hub like Old School Rooms in developing an emergency programme to tackle food poverty and support and advise some of our most vulnerable residents. Their engagement with the local community, mobilisation of volunteers, and partnership with the council and other community organisations embodies the Hackney spirit. I would urge everyone to go and look at their annual report and find out more about not just what they've done over many years, but what they did in the past year. I know that Joe and the team will be showing that spirit and commitment and make an absolutely wonderful and worthy winner tonight. And just to finish, they're part of a new wave of organisations that are hungry to respond to some of the entrenched issues in the borough, work with the council in the new ways that's been described earlier. I see Boiler House in N16, Shoreditch Trust and many others that want to make sure that we do rebuild Hackney better coming out of this pandemic. And I'll hand over to Joe to talk a little bit more about the enormous contribution that they have made.
Joe?
Thank you so much, and thank you to Mayor Glanville and the whole council for this award. We're really honoured to receive this and for our work to be recognised alongside some really inspiring and brilliant individuals and projects. So thank you so much. We're really, really honoured. In late March 2020, as the reality of lockdown loomed, I sat in our office with my team, and the first question I asked was, do we shut our doors or do we keep them open? And the immediate and collective response was, we need to keep our doors open. We knew the financial capacity and health risks in doing so, but we knew it was the right thing to do in order to continue to support people that relied on our services. But for the many people that would end up walking through our doors over the coming months, who needed food, support around housing, benefits, employment, or were just simply isolated. None of this would have been possible without the tireless work and professionalism of my team. So our project staff, nursery staff, admin, caretaker, cleaners, all who have worked beyond the call of duty in sometimes very challenging circumstances. With support from mutual aid groups and other networks, we had an extraordinary response from volunteers across our neighbourhood from all walks of life, helping to pack food parcels, deliver food, support families over the phone, provide advice at all times of day and night for residents struggling with housing, benefits and mental health related issues. I want to thank all of our volunteers, over 150 of them, who has supported our work over the last year and a half during our pandemic response. Also, this was a partnership response with Hackney Food Bank, Made in Hackney, National Food Service, and with colleagues across the voluntary sector. And of course, our engagement with the council through the Hackney Food Network and with the financial support provided for our work. Therefore, this award is a recognition of the collective response of staff, volunteers, and the local community across the borough. Finally, I see this award as an important reminder of the work we and countless others across the voluntary sector do. As the conversation starts to shift to the post-pandemic response, it is vital that here in Hackney, we don't go back to business as usual. The pandemic response showed that we can create effective and transformative partnerships and collaborate across the voluntary sector, health and education sectors, and the council in ways that are really intentional and not just in name only. And we need to learn from this. This should also be seen as an opportunity to reshape how we do things. Partnership and collaboration, if done properly, can be a risky business, but it forces us out of our silos and to think out of the box. If there is one thing that I have learned and we can learn from the past 18 months, is that by working together on an equal basis, using our resources effectively, we can continue to tackle the ongoing challenges of poverty and inequality that many people across our borough face with a new spirit of partnership, innovation and radicalism. Thank you so much. We're really honoured to receive this award, and we look forward to receiving this award in person in the autumn. Thank you very much.
That concludes the awards. Let's give a round of applause to all recipients. And we'd like now actually to get a response from Elaine, who unfortunately was affected by some glitches. Yes, Man Glanville.
I just wanted to round up, Mr. Speaker,
Oh, sorry.
and thank Emma Wynne. I don't know if she's still in the chamber, but she was absolutely intrinsic to the coordination of the Freedom of the Borough work and all the communication and engagement around the Mayor Civic Awards, and making sure that things were as seamless as we can make them in these unusual circumstances. And I think Michelle, Alfred, Elaine, E5 Baby Bank, Bangor Housing Association, and the Old School Rooms are the very best of Hackney, along with the Homerton and VCH Hackney. And I think we have obviously had one of the most trying and difficult years any borough has ever faced. But without them, all of the work that we've been celebrating this evening would have been impossible. And I think 70 minutes to highlight all of that and have a community take over this chamber is time well spent. Thank you.
Item 6, questions from members of the public. I understand Mr. Sills is online. Good evening, Mr. Sills. Would you like to ask your question?
As set out.
Thank you. Councillor Kennedy, you have up to 5 minutes to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And welcome back, Mr. Sills. Hasn't felt like full council without a question from Mr. Sills. And thank you for bringing this matter to my attention. I wasn't aware, Mr. Sills, that you had referred our adult social care services to the Care Quality Commission. But the first point I should make you aware of is that the CQC, whilst it is the independent regulator for health and social care in England, and they have a role to register, inspect and monitor care provision, that role does not apply to local authority adult social care departments. It only applies to registered care provision that may be directly provided or commissioned by the local authority. The CQC are also not a direct complaints receiving body, and they are most likely, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, to refer any complaint back to the provider's internal processes. Therefore, for complaints about local authority adult social care, the most appropriate route is via that adult social care authority's own internal complaint process. Where an individual is dissatisfied with the outcome of a complaint process received from a council and has exhausted that council's own process, then they may refer their complaint to the local government ombudsman. I note, Mr. Speaker, that it's been announced this week that the Equality and Human Rights Commission has begun an inquiry into how older people and those living with disabilities may complain about decisions made regarding their social care. And this might be something which Mr. Sills wishes to submit evidence to. We don't at the moment currently have a record of a complaint about adult social care raised by Mr. Sills, so I'm unable to comment further now or offer him any resolution. I must remind everyone that any reply I were able to give would, like Mr. Sills' question, be very careful not to make any individual or individuals identifiable. Finally, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, if Mr. Sills would like to contact either myself or the Group Director for Adults Health and Integration, we would be happy to attempt to resolve his complaint. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Mr. Sills, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. There is a Polish lady in living in this borough who father was involved in the clear up of the Chernobyl disaster, and
I'm here. A reminder of what I've just said, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Sills, we can't identify individuals, but you can make a vague interpretation. Anyway, you were saying that there was someone whose father was involved in the Chernobyl disaster. That was in Ukraine, not in Poland.
Yes, that is true. that many Polish people had to go and help sort the problem out. And the result is that she is living here now, and but worse was to come. In her first term at uni, she was taken very ill and was given.
I don't think, Mr. Sills, we want to go into the specifics. What I would suggest is that you contact Councillor Kennedy on the individual details that you have, and he would be only too happy to respond directly, perhaps speaking to any team leaders or social workers who've been involved. Thank you very much for your question. We'll now move on to item 7, which is questions from members of the council. Maximum time allocated is 30 minutes. Cabinet members, as you know, you only have up to 5 minutes. Please don't exceed that. After 30 minutes, questions not answered will receive a written response. And may I remind members that any supplementary question must arise directly out of the original question, and the reply must not be a speech or a statement. Right, question 7.1, Councillor Lufkin, please. I'd like to therefore ask it on his behalf as set out, and can I ask Councillor Maxwell to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As members of this council are aware, last December we adopted our Ageing Well strategy, meeting our manifesto pledge that we made to the people of Hackney in 2018. From the outset, we said that both our strategy and its implementation would be co-produced with older people. The strategy itself was developed through co-production, consultation and engagement with older people, and using peer facilitators through Connect Hackney. The final draft was signed off by a roundtable of older people's groups. The Hackney Older Citizens Committee was set up to ensure ongoing involvement and co-production of the implementation alongside a monitoring and governance role. Since adopting the strategy, I'm pleased to say that we have recruited over 40 older people to the committee who will steer delivery and hold us to account over the next few years. I would like to thank the officer, Soraya Saheed, for her hard work recruiting what is a diverse group of older people and her ongoing support for the committee. Linked to the committee, we also engage with other existing structures such as Age UK's Older People's Reference Group and Connect Hackney's Older People's Committee. Co-production was central to setting up how the committee would work, how members wanted to be involved, allowing people to decide the level of input and the areas of interest they want to be involved with. Much has been achieved in what is still the first year of the strategy, so I will just touch on some highlights. We have approved a pilot to create a friendly bench in one of our parks, which, if successful, will be rolled out across the borough. This was as a result of requests for opportunities to sit and chat. And we are starting to look at intergenerational work, together with Councillor Woodley, in line with our pledge to build a child-friendly borough. As a result, our child-friendly supplementary planning document now explicitly references the need for accessible benches. It also looks at the importance of building opportunities for ways for the generations to socialise and mix together, breaking down barriers and challenging ageism. Committee members are also keen to get their voices heard. Recently, 3 of them were part of a discussion on intergenerational connections with members of Young Futures on Hackney Social Radio. Other committee members will be working with us on a user-friendly summary of the strategy that can go out to places like libraries and surgeries, and they have also set up their own comms subgroup. October the 1st is International Day of Older People, and the committee members will co-produce a learning event, and there will be social events around that time. Members will also engage with upcoming reviews and strategies, such as the housing strategy, resident engagement strategy, the library review, the home care service review, the health and wellbeing strategy, and the LGBTQI strategy. So as you can see, they are being very busy. The committee will also hear from officers and cabinet members, and this is part of their governance role, holding us to account. The work of the committee sits alongside the work by cabinet members and officers, ensuring that older people are part of all we do. To summarise, Good progress has been made to build a borough that is welcoming, accessible and provides opportunities for older people, even during the most challenging of times. And together we are building a Hackney where everyone can age well. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell, and thanks for speaking directly in the microphone. If I can remind everyone, do please speak directly into the microphone, because then everyone can hear it online. Question 2 from Councillor Cam Adams. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would Deputy Mayor Bramble please respond?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Adams, for your question. Just to say that Hackney has worked really hard with Hackney Education and our families of school to transform education in this borough, and a committed, continual political will to stand behind our families of schools. And this year, there is a slight percentage of 1% of children and young people and their families that didn't get their first choice. So in 2020, you're talking about 826 children, which is a cohort of 2,392, which means about 65% of children got their first choices, against 2021, where you've got a cohort of 884, which is 2,431 cohort, and that means that 64% of children and young people didn't get their first choice, Mr. Speaker. And because of that improvement journey, you just find that more and more parents want to choose their schools. As a result, Mr. Speaker, what you will find is that Hackney is about 3% lower than the pan-London average, and you're talking 1% for first choices and 1% lower for first and second choices. But when you get to first, second and third choices, Mr. Speaker, we are then 1% higher, which means that although children and young people don't get their first choice, their second and third preference does begin to improve. What I would also like to highlight is that Hackney is in 20% of the top boroughs in terms of good and outstanding schools, Mr. Speaker. We currently have 2 schools that are below good, and Hackney Education is working with them to ensure that they go to good. It's only one of the reasons, Mr. Speaker, why our children and families sought our school. I'm very proud of our journey, but also schools offer a vast range of curricular activities, or it could just be that their parents went to that school. Some families, Mr. Speaker, go back 3 and 4 generations. So we work to improve our first choices, and but as I said, there's one school that has a significant higher first choices that they can ever be able to accommodate, Mr. Speaker. But then, because of that, as I mentioned, second and third choices do happen for those children and young people. What I would say, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to just take the opportunity to thank our family of schools for their sheer hard work, grit and determination. They have been part of our offer, not just online learning in schools, but part of us delivering meals to children and their families. We're talking about sometimes hampers, we're talking welfare checks, and the Mayor and I have been into schools to visit sometimes and have been able to speak and thank those staff personally. I suppose what I would want to thank also is governors. Some of those governors sit in this chamber today to commend that sheer, again, commitment. I have to kind of magpie and echo the words of Impact Sport, who thanked our young people. There are so many reasons why Hackney can be proud. Hackney Heart, we've heard the awards and the accolades for those organisations, but actually our children and young people, this is an opportunity to thank them, whether it's in school, out of school, online learning, classroom learning. They have been a reason why we can say we are proud of this borough, because it has been an incredible time for them in terms of a generation to experience a pandemic. So proud of them, and just want to echo my thanks, the Mayor's thanks, and every elected member in this chamber. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Councillor Adams, do you have a supplementary?
No. Mayor Bramble for the response. Thanks.
Question 3 from Councillor Sophie Conway. Could you ask your question, Councillor Conway?
I sit up, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. That will be answered by the Cabinet Member for Health, Adult Social Care and Leisure, Councillor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Councillor Conway, for your question. City and Hackney has several services working on improving perinatal mental health. Unfortunately, Councillor Conway, data on diagnosis and treatment from those services, although available on request, aren't available within our question timeframes. I have asked the team to submit all that data as quickly as possible. I will update you and I will update this question response for the minutes. But the data team do agree with the inference of your question, which is that given the health inequalities that we see reflected in birth outcomes for some of our communities nationally, it is very possible that we would see similar patterns for mental health associated with those outcomes, both nationally and locally. We also know that a significant proportion of postnatal depression and perinatal mental health issues go undiagnosed. The system locally works on the assumption that these disparities exist and therefore is investing in a range of services to improve perinatal mental health, including postnatal depression and postpartum psychosis. These include ELF, the East London Foundation Trust, which as provider of the perinatal mental health service is developing a comprehensive dashboard. They expect it to be ready in 2020. It will gather metrics relevant to health inequalities and disparities, such as ethnicity, housing, employment status, disabilities, enabling this to be viewed alongside other information such as diagnosis, time under treatment, and patient experience feedback. All of that will then be used to inform a much more detailed view of service delivery going forward. ELF's Perinatal Mental Health Service works closely with community organisations to develop trusted relationships that ensure women feel able to access services. They offer flexible service delivery, and they have a strong people participation group with women of varied and mixed backgrounds. Their recently launched perinatal website has been designed with translation features and self-referral information on it to ensure greater accessibility. At a regional level, the North East London Perinatal Network exists. This is a network of practitioners and commissioners that's been exploring health inequalities seen locally to understand the most identified issues, particularly in light of the recent pandemic, and also to examine possible solutions. ELF is also piloting community-based work through GPs and antenatal clinics for groups that may perceive some sort of stigma associated with accessing perinatal mental health support. They help facilitate phone access to groups without digital access. We heard earlier from Butine during the Mayor's Awards how she partnered up with Bump Buddies. It was delightful to hear that. And of course, Bump Buddies, provided through Shoreditch Trust, offer peer mentoring support for vulnerable women, and this may include those experiencing postnatal depression. They offer extra support for women who are parenting alone, women struggling with homelessness or accommodation problems, and women who have broader health problems and face immigration issues or who are new to the UK. On a universal basis, finally, Mr. Speaker, our health visiting service offers all women who are within our service an assessment of their emotional health and their postnatal mood at both first and onward contacts, in line with NICE, National Institute of Clinical Excellence, guidance. Our maternity service has also implemented emotional wellbeing screening at key points of contact antenatally for all pregnant women, and this receives high levels of positive feedback from service users. I'm also aware, Mr. Speaker, that Councillor Hayhurst has agreed to Councillor Conway's suggestion to discuss this matter in further detail at Health in Hackney in October. So I'll make sure we have all available data ready for the papers for that meeting. And I look forward, Mr. Speaker, to investigating the matter further with colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Conway, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a very interesting answer and an interesting question. Next question.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, under section 10.3 of the council procedure rules, it says, a notice of questions, a councillor may ask a maximum of 2 questions per meeting. To my mind, the coming question has got at least 10 in it. Is that in order, Mr. Speaker?
Let me ask our monitoring officer. Dawn, do you want to respond?
One question is the number of individual elements to it, so the question that you asked involved. So my reading is looking at that. It reads 1 question if we are in one.
It looks as though we've spared the Tower of London. Thank you, Councillor Odds. Right, the next question is from Councillor Gilbert Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As set out.
Thank you. They'll be responded to by Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to Councillor Gilbert Smith for giving me a great introduction, which should be 7.4.10 rather than 7.4 with the number of questions. But let me firstly start by explaining why we've introduced the low traffic neighbourhood schemes in the school streets, which I think are incredibly important to supporting our residents to walk, cycle and to shop locally as we come out of the pandemic. We want these changes to benefit Hackney residents, and that's why since I've started my role, I've been absolutely committed to listening and engaging with our residents across the borough as part of our experimental process. I should start by saying that it is an experimental process, and some of the results of the school streets and the low traffic neighbourhood schemes have been absolutely phenomenal and brilliant for our borough, but of course there is no fixed decision made. And when we look at our school streets, for example, where we've become a national pioneer in the country, we've rolled out 48 school streets with covering 50 schools. We've seen a reduction of 74% tailpipe emissions outside our school gates, which is amazing results to protect the lungs of our children. We've seen an increase in 30% more children walking to school, 50% more children cycling and scooting to school, which is absolutely what we set out to achieve with these schemes, and hopefully we'll be continuing in this ambition. When we look at our low traffic neighbourhood schemes, again, we've helped reimagine what the streets of Hackney can look like as we come out of the pandemic. But as I said, what we will do, and in response to Councillor Smythe's question, is, and many of the points that he's alluded to, I will write to him in more detail as it requires a much more technical response beyond the time that I have been given today. But we will be looking at a various number of factors, including air quality, bus times, polling with our residents. We'll be looking at focus groups. Of course, we'll be looking at the commonplace consultation that has been live, which has had a record number of responses of 19,000 people have responded to the consultation. Absolutely great way of demonstrating democracy in action. And as a result of that, we will make decisions going forward. And as I said, we have been listening and adapting on the way. And colleagues in this chamber will be aware that a couple of weeks ago, I did announce a blue badge exemption if some of these permanent, if some of these schemes were made permanent going forward. And that's part of that listening exercise. Whilst we do want our residents to switch to more walking and cycling and to take a public transport, we also do understand that not everyone is able to make that switch. And therefore, we have recognised that by allowing access to blue badge holders if those schemes are made permanent through bus filters. What I would say, just on some key facts, which I think, and some of these facts are evolving, of course, because we are continuously monitoring the schemes. Where we look at the traffic reduction and car journey times, we have seen car journey reduction of traffic around, on average, around 40 to 50% within LTNs since the introduction of LTNs. And we've also seen an average of 14% reduction on the boundary roads as well. We are going to be continuing to monitor traffic because, of course, a lot of this will be impacted by the restrictions easing or not. And that's exactly why we have extended the consultation phase. But what I would say, what we will be doing in the next couple of weeks is we'll be releasing much more data around bus times, air quality, and we are releasing data from various low traffic neighbourhood schemes, and we haven't seen traffic disproportionately impacted. So in summary to Councillor Smythe's question, our ambition is there to tackle toxic air pollution and to protect the lungs of our children as we look to tackle the climate emergency. But of course, we want to do this hand in hand with our community. At the moment, it is an experimental phase. My door is open for everyone to meet with me, to whoever wants to discuss the LTN schemes. And we have been doing that, and we'll continue to do that until we make a decision in later this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And congratulations, by the way, on your recent birthday and your recent visit to Prince Charles to receive your great honour, which we all very much applaud and support. Councillor Smith, do you have a supplementary question?
No, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to Councillor Coburn for his answer.
Thank you. Councillor Rathbone, your question, please. Do we allow second supplementary?
Not from people on the provisional question.
Apparently not allowed. Right, Councillor, are we trying to get to the end of this? You'll have plenty of opportunities later to speak. Councillor Rathbone, please.
As set out, Mr. Speaker,
Councillor Kennedy, could you respond?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Councillor Rathbone, for your question. A reminder, Mr. Speaker, that all GP practices are private businesses, mostly owned by individual GPs or groups of GPs, but of course, some are owned by other larger organisations such as Operos Health, to which Councillor Rathbone refers in his question. Another such larger organisation, Mr. Speaker, was AT Medics Limited. This was a company founded by a group of London GPs, and they specialised in turning around struggling London and South East of England practices. In late 2020, it was this company, AT Medics, and the 34 GP surgery contracts that they held, that was taken over by Operos Health, which is the UK branch of Centene, which is a huge US health company. The result of this, some NHS funding for primary care, albeit in small amounts, finds its way directly now into the pockets of US shareholders. I think, Mr. Speaker, what was envisaged in 1948 at the setting up of our National Health Service. Mayor Glanville and I joined other leaders and health leads from across London in requesting the then Secretary of State for Health, Matt Hancock, in a letter in March of this year, actually, to launch an inquiry into that takeover, but we've had no reply. As we subsequently found out, Mr. Speaker, he had quite a lot on his hands.
On his hands or in his hands?
One of those GP contracts that was taken over is not only in Hackney, but also in my ward, as Councillor Rathbone must be aware, and I think that's what causes him. Second reserve bidder rather than just one winner. Local patient feedback, as I said above, is collated and provided to the bidders, and the bidders' proposals have to address that feedback as part of the award criteria. There are also various other criteria around local requirements, such as system working with the wider health system, proving that you can collaborate with the local primary care network, and proving that you are giving social value. This all gives me some reassurance, Mr. Speaker, and I hope it does Councillor Rathbone too, that a rigorous process is in place to ensure that the quality of service that I mentioned earlier remains in place. It doesn't, however, offer any guarantee that the providers of that service might not, in the end, be beholden to shareholders a very long way away from Hackney. And that, Mr. Speaker, would require, in my opinion, changes to primary legislation about the eligibility of organisations to bid for primary care contracts.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Rathbone?
I just wanted to say what an excellent answer that was, and what an excellent job that Councillor Kennedy does with all his portfolios. No, I don't have a supplementary.
We'll take that as a rhetorical question, therefore within the rules. The next question is Councillor Adajari, who is online. Are you able to join us?
I am. As set out, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. That will be answered by Councillor Susan Fajana-Thomas.
Thanks very much, Councillor Adejari, for your question. And just to start by saying thanks to all the council staff in various services that are helping to tackle ASD in the borough, because this week is the UK first ever ASD week. So, Councillor Adejari, can I just say that Gillette Square and the surrounding streets are a priority for the Community Safety Partnership, and this location continues to attract much attention. As lead member for Community Safety, ASB is on top of my agenda, and I hope I'll continue to work with colleagues, work with you, Councillor Snell, and local residents in Dostin area to tackle this issue. Having said that, this area has not been short of investment and engagement in the last decade from this council. I'm sure Councillor Nicholson, as lead member for the generation for many years, can attest to this fact. The intention of the CSP at the moment is to work with law-abiding residents and business owners in the square to ensure that the place is a safe place for everyone, including those vulnerable people you mentioned in your question, who are in the square and use the square as meeting place. Councillor Adejari, the council strategy therefore involves three main aims. It's about prevention, it's about diversion, and it's about enforcement. In the last 6 months, I can say to you that the investment, the intervention around Gillette Square is massive. But if time permits, I will just mention 20 of them, Councillor Adejari, starting from the fact that Gillette Square now have a task and finishing group in place, which this group is attended by community representatives to ensure that we are providing feedback to the community. It's not just about the council, the community members are there as well as the police partners. There is a comprehensive action plan for the area, Councillor Adejari, and this is being monitored every week to ensure nothing is slipping off this agenda. You mentioned the tragic murder of Patrick Anstey. It is unfortunate. And since that murder, the police have ensured that there are 35 dispersal orders in Dostin area, and the police continue to have a presence in the square. Can I just add that following this murder, due to the partnership working with the police murder investigation arrested, charged, and remanded a suspect for this murder, who is now awaiting trial. Over the next 2 weeks, we will install a further 6 CCTV cameras, providing greater coverage in the vicinity. This is as a result of a recent 197 investment in replacement and upgrading CCTV cameras in the square and Ridley Road. The place is both on my radar and Mayor Glanville's radar. I remember when he was recommending this capital spending to Cabinet for approval a few weeks ago. He said he wants to make it the Dostin area safer and determined to address crime and antisocial behavior in this area. So, Councillor Adejari, we are on top of the game. The Community Safety part of the things we are doing, we've now negotiated with waste collection. This is one of the issues in the area, littering. The waste collections and cleaning services, they now clean and collect waste in that location daily. There are community bannings orders that have been applied for against known convicted criminals who are repeat offenders and frequent the square. Street team is working to ensure that all the lights in the square are working. There are licensing visits. We have commissioned key license premises to ensure compliance with the law. Zero tolerance to any businesses in the area that are involved in criminality. Turning Point, a charity organization, is providing outreach in the square to support the vulnerable people you mentioned. Trading Standard is seeking compliance from licensee in the area to sign up to the reduced strength alcohol protocol. And our enforcement officers are providing high visible patrol in the area and have issued a number of community protection warnings and notices in the area. Street scene, there are repairs that are ongoing. Street scenes are redesigning the area as we speak, in particular the sitting area, in an attempt to minimize unnecessary loitering while maximizing lawful attendance in the square. Our parking colleagues have undertaken an initiative to seize unlicensed dangerous mopeds from the area, as well as seeking compliance with parking laws. In June, parking officers issued 35 fixed penalty of notices for unlawful parking and or people who were loitering around the area. This in comparison to the last 12 months. This is the highest that has happened in the area. Mr. Speaker, I'm not too sure if I'm exhausting my time.
I think if you could conclude your remarks.
The police have implemented operation to target drug supply in the area. As I said, Councillor Adejare, there are a lot of things we are doing at the moment, and I hope I've reassured you that the council is not neglecting this location, and that I've mentioned before is both on the mayor's radar as well as mine. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much, Councillor, for John Thomas. Councillor Adejare, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, just a very, very quick one. Thank you, Councillor, for John Thomas, for a very thorough overview of the work that's been undertaken over recent months. It was just a quick one in respect of the intervention activities with Turning Point. Are they feeding back directly to you in terms of outcomes and successes? And how long are they contracted to work in the square? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Adejare. The Turning Point charity are working with the vulnerable people in the area, as I've said. And because of time, I'm happy to provide you with a full briefing around their work with vulnerable people there. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes questions. Any other questions will be written replies. Before we have the elected mayor's statement, we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break for those who need to use it, and then we'll recommence at just after 25 minutes past 8. Thank you. Okie dokie. Well, we're going to start again. Some members are now in the public gallery. That's not because they're members of the public, but we welcome them anyway and hope they can hear everything that is said. And there are still others in the room and others online. We now come to item 8, the elected mayor's statement. Mayor Glanville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A lot has happened since we last met at June Full Council. I'd like to join you in wishing both happy birthday and congratulations to Councillor Coban for his MBE last week. I think his work with young people through My Life, My Say, but also how he approaches politics and his work in cabinet is a complete asset to the borough. And I'm not surprised that he got this fantastic recognition from Prince Charles. And anyone that's seen the images of him with his parents, I think will be completely touched about his journey in Hackney. I'd also like to, it's been a busy week, I'd like to also wish everyone in our Muslim communities, our diverse Muslim communities, a very warm Eid Mubarak. I thank former Speaker Adams for making sure that even remotely I could take part in these celebrations and wish everyone onward celebrations this week. Last month, Mr. Speaker, I updated the borough on the steadily rising cases of coronavirus in Hackney, and sadly, cases continue to rise. And if you look at the public dashboard, you will see that in the week ending 10th of July, there have been 976 new confirmed cases in Hackney, the highest since January. Cases have more than doubled amongst 20 to 39-year-olds in just 2 weeks. And since our last meeting, sadly, we have lost another resident of coronavirus, so that's 2 in recent weeks. We heard earlier, and it was referenced, that there are rising hospital admissions at the Homerton. And I think it's a warning to us all, Mr. Speaker, that this virus has not gone away and still represents a significant threat to Hackney. I'm pleased with the progress that we've made on vaccinations, and that now across every age category, including 16 to 39-year-olds, that we have got more than 50% of adults vaccinated. But there's a long way to go. As Councillor Kennedy always reminds us, and we met with the NHS and had the Health and Wellbeing Board earlier today, there are still over 10,000 over 65s and vulnerable residents that still need to get their vaccine. We must all redouble our efforts to ensure that that vaccine uptake continues. I think it was Lauren who referenced the 14 councillors that will be taking part in the vaccine centre mobilisation on Saturday. That builds on the fantastic work of the Hackney Vax Pack over the since before January. I think the first centre at Ellesdale was started by them in December. We saw at our vaccine centre over 1,500 doses in a single weekend. Actually, that weekend it was accompanied by other pop-ups and outreach across GP practices, other parts of primary care, and the voluntary sector partnerships. And in the last couple of weeks, we've seen events at Thomas More with our elders in the Irish community, Ridley Road pop-up, Hindle House with Coffee Afrique and Somali community, Edge Youth Centre today with community action, and more opportunities for people to engage with vaccination. I want to pay a particular tribute to all of our community pharmacies who have played an intrinsic role and a growing role in our outreach work. Sadly though, Mr. Speaker, there are those that oppose this activity, and it would be wrong for me not to condemn the anti-vaxxers that have taken hold in part of Hackney Downs, and just thank Ian Holland and Councillor Woodley for their leadership on it alongside Hackney Downs councillors. It's really clear that that encampment is not welcome. They are disrupting use of the park, and they're also intimidating young people at both Stormont and Mossbourne schools. We don't want them here, and I firmly ask them to leave. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, I just wish that our clear and cautious approach to the pandemic was reflected in what the government has been doing in recent weeks. It's been confusing and frankly careless. We've always been cautious here in Hackney, never over-promising, wanting to move in a safety-first way for our staff, for our services, for our partners, our residents, businesses and visitors. And indeed, that's why we've been cautious, Mr. Speaker, about returning to this chamber, and why so many of us have taken rapid tests today and continue to do so, leading from the front, testing whether vaccinated or not twice a week. Contrast that with the approach from the government. Always too late to lock down, no focus on travel, always promising freedom and then snatching it away. Boris Johnson's irresponsible Freedom Day messaging, which within a week he's already backtracking on, leaves many local public health teams picking up the pieces of his communications mess. And we saw that with the scenes on Monday in the early hours for the nighttime economy in September. Too little, too late, confusing, and feeds what are nascent culture wars and intergenerational wars about pejoratively seeing those just doing what the government has advised as somehow harming our response. We need more consistency, and we cannot have ministers like Robert Jenrick going that he would boast that he would throw his masks away, only to then get the Prime Minister clarifying that masks were still important. And the less said about our social care minister over the recent months, the better. We're clear, Mr. Speaker, that residents should continue to wear masks in busy places and indoors, in crowded buildings, and follow the Mayor of London's guidance on public transport, or we just risk the Johnson variant having an even greater hold on our borough. We have just awarded the Homerton Hospital with Freedom of the Borough, and that's a small token of our gratitude for everything that they've done. But as we're now showing on our public dashboard, there's been a 67% rise in beds occupied by confirmed COVID patients just in 1 week, and there are patients now on mechanical ventilation, which they were not on prior to that. I'd like to thank everyone involved in our public health response, obviously the Homerton, our CCG, GPs, community pharmacy, and those unsung heroes in social care, and the people that we thanked earlier and the champions. And Councillor Kennedy played an intrinsic role in all of this work. I can only hope that the Prime Minister will reflect on the chaos that he's unleashed over this summer, and that the leaders like Civic, businesses like BA and Eurostar have shown, and indeed local councils like Hackney taking that prudent approach. I reflect on, finally, on mask wearing, that it can cut the risk of contracting coronavirus by up to 70%. And certainly when I travel on an overcrowded Victoria Line train or go to the theatre or the cinema, I would rather do so wearing a mask, Mr. Speaker, than not. That is what responsible government is about at a local and national level. And it is not mutually exclusive to want a return of our freedoms, a reigniting of our local economy, and supporting cultural venues while being cautious. Those are firmly not mutually exclusive, and they aren't here in Hackney. That's why last Friday, Mr. Speaker, I joined Deputy Mayor Nicholson and cultural organisations at a virtual roundtable to listen to them about their concerns and discuss how the council can help reopen safely. We've already backed them in attracting over £80 million of Arts Council England cultural recovery funding going into grassroots cultural organisations. 10% of all funding in London has gone to Hackney organisations alone. Over the last 18 months, we've also invested nearly £500,000 in cultural activities, from Carnival to Discovering Young Hackney and our Windrush micro grants programme. Following the round table, I'm delighted that tomorrow the council will be formally launching its new campaign, Hello Again Hackney. It provides a very attractive wraparound to Hackney Life this month. It's part of a campaign to help promote safe reopening for local businesses, reconnecting with audiences, and making sure that our cultural venues reopening fund, and in the future, in the autumn, our SEAL Communities Fund, give rebirth to our cultural activities here in the borough and help us reopen and rebuild a better Hackney. Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Rathbone. We also on Friday paid a visit to King's Hall Leisure Centre in Homerton, and I thank Deputy Mayor Bramble, Councillors Kennedy, Lynch, Councillor Deputy Mayor Nicholson for joining on that visit. We know, and we've been celebrating, as you said up front, Mr. Speaker, the reopening of the new Britannia Leisure Centre, but we have never forgotten our duty to the residents in the east of the borough and to King's Hall, and to the support it provides diverse communities around swimming. So at Cabinet on Monday evening, we announced a programme of interim repairs and set a clear course to invest in the long-term future of that heritage asset and amazing community activity. And I'd again like to thank the tireless activism of Homerton councillors, Deputy Mayor Bramble, Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Nicholson with that work.
One minute, please.
We also, Mr. Speaker, broke ground at the new £3 million Hackney Central Station entrance, a new safer and more accessible entrance to the station, as well as preserving the community garden of earthly delights. Mr. Speaker, Deputy Mayor Bramble referenced earlier on in responding to Councillor Adams the challenge of school places and getting first preferences. But we were incredibly proud to visit City of London Academy at Shoreditch Park and celebrate its opening, an amazing new school alongside the Britannia Leisure Centre. I could go on, Mr. Speaker, but I'd like to finish with the work that we're doing around anti-racism and recognise the bitter disappointment that it was that England did not win the Euros. There are many football fans of many domestic teams in the chamber this evening, but I know we were all united in supporting a diverse team and especially the diverse players in Rashford, Saka and Sancho. It was completely unacceptable, the racist abuse that they received. And I think a timely reminder of why our anti-racism stance is so important, why taking the knee in the Town Hall Square isn't just performative, and why all the work that's led by the black councillors in this chamber, including Councillor Williams, and our work on anti-racism is absolutely essential. We must never take our eye off that ball. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
In the absence of Councillor Levy, Councillor Steinberger will reply. You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to first of all congratulate England for going all the way till the final. As a Tottenham fan, I'm used to always disappointment, so I wasn't half surprised that we only got to the final.
I thought that was as a Conservative. No, I shouldn't.
I must, Mr. Speaker, take away from my 5 minutes.
I'm so sorry.
I must say, however, the difference that you see as there's two players particularly who stuck out. Obviously, Harry Kane, our captain, getting us all the way, the leader on the pitch, and the Everton goalkeeper who done miracles. I've never seen him play so good. The one difference we had was when the Spurs player stood up to take the penalty, he got it in. When the Arsenal player stood up, he bottled it. So that's the difference we have. I'm proud to be a Spurs fan. I just want to move on to more important things. It's very upsetting to obviously to hear that the coronavirus again is on the up. I think somewhat, it seems like the mayor seems to think that he's got all the answers to the virus, which is very helpful. I don't think any doctors have come up with the answer, but we have here somebody, as well as a mayor doctor also. It's interesting also talking about the mask, wearing the mask and not wearing. 1 minute you're wearing it, 1 minute you're not. It's very interesting how you play with your mask. The other thing that is very interesting, you talk about the government opening up and how unreliable. In the same breath, you're saying about going to the cinema. So I can't understand, you yourself can't decide which way you're going, whether you are going places, you're not going places. It would help if you, before decide for others, you decide for yourself. The next thing is I wanted to thank obviously the Conservative government for increasing 3% for the NHS, for the workers. Obviously, these figures will be distorted when we hear from the other side. The one thing we can see is that the Conservative government is the one that actually giving more money, not the Labour, despite the fact that they love spending the money. I did see an article, British Labour leader aims to ban pro-Corbyn poisonous groups from the party. Seems to be talking about 1,000, something like 1,000 members in the Labour Party, which sounds back to the same old stuff, basically. All these shenanigans which we're talking about, I won't forget when COVID started, when the people from the community called up for kosher food, and obviously they were given non-kosher food, and I would have thought it would have been a bit more reliable. And obviously, we'll again blame the government. Sure, the government work in the Hackney kitchen. It's all the government. It's nothing. Here we don't take any responsibility. Another very interesting thing, we're sitting here, perhaps this room here is probably hotter than in Israel now. We don't have any money for obviously getting this place properly, that we should be able to sit like proper human beings and have decent air here. The amount of money spent that we have here on the gallery, councils, obviously the system's working amazing. Again, another picture how this council wastes the money and still can't get their act together. But the main thing is basically closing roads, making chaos, more pollution, and then saying their pollution is being reduced. Wherever you go now, it takes you 1 hour to drive. They closed now in my ward in Clapham Common, a tiny road, which TfL, which is your own partner, was against it. Fire engine, ambulance, Hatzola, and the mayor is soon going to say the traffic rushes there. Well, I think we should take it to the petition to get glasses. If traffic can rush in such a road, then you're seeing a different road. You're not living in reality. The one reality you are living in, you're causing such a chaos now there that something is going to happen, and you're going to have to take responsibility, because it's impossible to come out there
1 minute, please,
on the current system. And as always, same old mess up, and you don't care about what you're doing. I want to congratulate Hatzola for purchasing their new piece. Obviously, again, a very helpful council to Hatzola, more busy with liability, giving their liability away. And when it's Hatzola, which I was last week on Friday, a woman collapsed on St Kilda's Road, a woman from the community, not a Jewish woman, and there were 4 members there trying to save her life. I don't know when you're going to grow up and going to understand how important it is for the whole Hackney Hatzola, not just the community. The fact is, you've got your priorities wrong as usual, and you don't know what you're doing, and you're going to tell me all kinds of rubbish. And to be quite frank, I think it's about time you start appreciating that you're one of the only boroughs that have got Hatzola, and something which will save all of us, and start taking them serious, because this is really ridiculous. I do want to mention Anne
Can you
Canning,
conclude your remarks, please?
What's that?
Can you conclude your remarks?
I want to finish by thanking Anne Canning for the work she's done when she was here. I also want to say again, once again, the council has, obviously, I want to thank him for all the work he's doing and continuing doing. We'll speak about that later, another pig's meal. Okay, I'll finish by that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Steinberger. Mayor Glanville, you have the right to reply. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Steinberger. A veritable blancmange of comments, I think, but I'll try and do them justice. I did just want to point out, Mr. Speaker, this is the second full council in a row where the Conservative group have not tabled a single question to hold this administration to account. And I think that's quite a dereliction of their duties as the opposition opposite. I'll start with Hatzola, as I did last time. The work that we have been doing since September to ensure that Hatzola can continue to operate and deliver for our residents has been absolute, ensuring that whether they're on blue light or they're volunteers or their routes, all of those discussions and an open door with the transport team and Councillor Coban. There is no risk to the operation of any of our emergency services or Hatzola from the efforts that we're making to reduce car dominance. And that little spur outside Liberty Hall is perhaps one of the most dangerous roads. I doubt it is much longer than the pit in between the two groups here in the room. But if you've stood there at Liberty Hall, at the memorial events, doing community gardening with local residents, it's frankly a lethal junction. And local residents who are behind Liberty Hall want to see that change. And that is what we're trialling with the road closure there in that location. And I'm very pleased that we're doing it. I'd like to take the opportunity, because you've opened up, I think, a little bit of discussion about people joining and leaving the council, to welcome Diane Benjamin to the council as head of children's services. And before we meet next, obviously, Jackie Burt will be joining as our DCS. Really important appointments. We've got another appointment later this evening, which I won't go into now. I would like to pay tribute to the work of Jake Ferguson, who heads up HCDS. I'm sure some of you will have received notification that he is leaving after nearly 20 years service for the voluntary sector here in the borough. And I know that he's going on to lead some really impressive anti-racism work in a new organisation that is sadly we can't actually talk about. I'm not a doctor, Councillor Steinberger, but we do employ one in Dr. Husbands as our Director of Public Health. And we've followed her advice inside the organisation, externally, and her public health team, I think, has been second to none, whether it's advising our schools, our community organisations, and everything else.
I apologise.
I didn't hear that, Councillor. I didn't hear that, Councillor Steinberger.
After the whole community shouldn't go to synagogue when it was clearly allowed to.
Well,
I had to apologise.
All right, carry on, Mayor Glanville.
And on non-kosher food, it wasn't our work on food that wasn't suitable for our diverse communities or culturally competent. It was the government's work on food. And as soon as we were able, we co-produced with the community a help and advice line and sourced kosher food and empowered community organisations in Stamford Hill around food. And they're proud members of our Food Justice Network to this day and are continuing that work. I've seen it for myself. Councillor Steinberger, I think the point about leadership is making sure that you follow the science, you listen to your communities, and you act in a prudent way. It is been allowed since May the opportunity to go to the cinema in a safe way. What I don't think we need to see is a full opening up as cases are rising. I have only ever followed the guidance that has been set out, and I think supporting our cultural organisations where it is safe to do so is absolutely right. I finish on a final political note. We have been talking a lot about vulnerable residents this evening, Mr. Speaker, and one of the things I'm most proud of is our work around rough sleeping. It's a very difficult piece of work, but we were committed to everyone in, and we were committed to working with our rough sleepers. Councillor Ette and I had written to the government just highlighting another one of their gaps in their post-COVID planning, and that is around continuing everyone in. And we have decided that it's absolutely the right decision to invest £1.4 million of our reserves in continuing to keep rough sleepers in accommodation. And that is both those with no recourse to public funds and those that are on care pathways, because we've got practice in the borough and we want to work to regularise their status. That is what a borough can do when it's true to its values, even after 11 years of austerity. But we can't keep bailing the government out. And I hope at some point that the party opposite will start representing this borough and not their party ticket when it comes to the needs of our borough. We are not wasting money. Value for money is really important, and that's why I highlighted the value for money of the party opposite and the fact that you're a dereliction of your democratic duties.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Item 9, annual update on progress with decarbonisation commitments. Members are requested to note the late circulation of Appendix 2 following consideration by Cabinet on 19th of July. I'd like to invite Councillor Coburn to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm proud to present the Chamber with Hackney Council's second annual report on progress with our decarbonisation. Let me firstly start by thanking my predecessor, former Councillor John Burke, for his work and leadership to progress our ambition to tackle the climate crisis. Mr. Speaker, the work we've done over the past year to tackle climate crisis has been absolutely tremendous, and we've gone above and beyond our net zero energy strategy, defining how it will reduce emissions from our buildings, and is set to publish our new green infrastructure strategy and biodiversity action plan. Mr. Speaker, I can go on and on, but what I would say is, at last month, together with Deputy Mayor Bramble and Mayor Glanville, we went to a school in Cardinal Pole School to launch a conversation with young people on what they would like us to see to tackle climate emergency. And the message was clear. They want us to take action, and we will continue to take action and be ambitious in taking our action, because young people in our borough and our residents deserve a cleaner and greener world that we all deserve to live in. Thank you very much.
To debate the report? Yes. Councillor Steinberger.
I don't think I've ever seen so much rubbish in the bit of time I've seen it on the table in my life. Basically, a thing of 83%. If you can explain me where you've got that figure, and if you're really trying to tell me that you've got that figure, that just shows where all your rubbish comes from. It's not possible on a car, doesn't matter where the car's registered. You don't know if the car's picking somebody up and taking them to Homerton. You've got no idea what's happening in the journey. You've just been putting forward these crazy figures from day one. The fact is, you're making people's lives misery. And you take an example in Mare Street, when you closed that shopping centre, when you closed for the buses to go there, you isolated the old people, couldn't go to the shops anymore. You chucked the traffic onto Emmis Road. Now you're talking about closing Emmis Road. You don't know what you're doing. The fact is, wherever you haven't touched, it's good. Wherever you touch, you mess up. Typical this council. Where if you look, wherever you look at it, look at Cranach Road. You brought out the curb there, you messed the whole place up. Now you want to talk, oh, there you will make a one-way. You won't make a one-way nowhere else, only there because it's to clean up your mess. And let's get it very clear. You're actually toxicating more than 18,000 children. If you count all the schools on Emmis Park, which totals probably, I would say, anything between 5,000 and 10,000 children. Furthermore, all these neighboring roads around the school, which are local kids, you're toxicating them. I drove today whilst there was a school, a street school. The amount of traffic that's in the surrounding roads, for you, those children mean nothing at all. They don't exist. What you're doing is you're coming up with figures. You haven't even got a clue what you're talking about. Come and have a look what you're actually doing to the area. You're damaging the whole area, and then you're talking about cleaner air.
Thank you, Councillor Steinberger.
Toxicating everybody.
Okay.
It's a disgrace. I will definitely vote against it. And one thing more I can say, the reason why we've got this report is because there's so much rubbish in there. We shouldn't have enough time to see what rubbish there isn't.
I think you've made your views very coherently clear, whatever members think of them. Councillor Odds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Firstly, I'd like to say that I totally agree with what Councillor Steinberger said. With this report is talking about cleaning up the borough. The first thing we could do to clean up the borough is chuck this report in the bin. Recycle it, of course. But there's various things. I mean, of course, we talk about a climate crisis, about global warming. There is no such thing as man-made global warming. Global warming has been happening since God created the world 5,781 years ago, and nothing we do will change that. But going on to things that are actually mentioned in the report, your 10 key priorities are to adopt WHO guidelines, adopt guidelines from a Chinese puppet who exonerated the Chinese from producing COVID and deliberately sending it out into the world. What a joke! It would be laughable if it wasn't so silly. And then you talk about localized solutions, that combination of measures such as low traffic neighborhoods, where thousands of people marched from Old Street to Hackney Town Hall to oppose them. And thousands, literally thousands, were on that march. There were hundreds outside the town hall at the last council meeting. And when one of them asked a certain councillor, what you're going to do about the low traffic neighbourhoods, are you going to change them? How does the mayor react to his saying, we do what we want. I think that is bringing Hackney into disrepute.
Councillor, can you conclude your remarks, please?
To the monitoring officer for that.
Thank you very much. Mayor Glanville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was hoping that I would provide some clarity to the heckling that was provided by the party opposite, but they really brought it all to life very vividly on YouTube there. But I will just help them. When talking about tree planting, the party opposite shouted shame. No man-made climate emergency or climate change. I think I'm directly quoting Councillor Odd's, the most senior Conservative politician in the chamber, that he would drive his diesel car around the borough come what may in a previous debate. You've got Councillor Steinberger very vividly illustrating why you are the problem. You're driving a car at school time around the borough. That is the problem. The ANPR figures that Councillor Coban have is because we have cameras. We have cameras. They look at the number plate. They see where the car is registered. And then those figures are published. It's a transparent approach to data, Councillor Steinberger. On school streets, there's an open offer to anyone in the borough who wants to work with us around school streets and making those school streets expand. There's an element that the far right and the far left meet round the back on some of these issues, and the conspiracies around the Chinese controlling the WHO or somehow making up climate change to attack us. It's all absolutely absurd. I've never heard such ridiculousness in this chamber, and it's an absolute disgrace that the only opposition is one that is so ineffective, out of touch, and out of kilter with the vote. And the idea we would open the Narrowway again. Have you been to the Narrowway and seen the social distancing that we're able to preserve in the queue for the post office and the bank and the cafe culture that's there and the flourishing businesses and the investment from M&S? That is all because of the hard work of this council and those councillors.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Councillor Coburn, do you want to briefly respond? Or can we have some order, please? We need to finish this meeting by 10. I haven't had my dinner. Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and I think the Mayor very adequately responded to the comments from across the chambers. All I would say is, look, we follow facts and the science, and the facts, the figures are figures. We know tailpipe emissions are down by 74%. We know 83% of vehicles are coming from outside of Hackney. The Mayor very eloquently explained to you how we get those figures through the cameras. If you've got facts that suggest otherwise, please feel free to put them forward, and obviously we can review those. But at the moment, we can only go by the facts and the science, and that's what the facts and the science tells us. So we'll continue with our ambition to roll out school streets across Hackney, where there are schools who are disproportionately being impacted through the displacement of some of the traffic. We'll look into those as well, and we'll continue to speak to those schools, and we'll implement further school streets. And we want to make sure that we are having a one-size-fits-all approach for the borough, where we make sure, a fair offer for everyone across the borough, whilst recognising those differences. So that's all I would say. I think on the stuff that Councillor Oz raised about China and stuff, I think you're not doing any service to the residents of Hackney who vote us to be here to be talking seriously about their future. And this sounds a bit like student politics that I'm not going to sort of entertain in the chamber. That's all I would say. The one final thing I would say, Mr. Speaker, is that since starting my role in March, I did explain earlier that I have been committed to listening. And what I wanted to touch upon before sort of time was running out is our new roadmap to net zero, which is all about setting out how we plan to work with our residents. Our approach is about working with people. We started that conversation in the school, in Cardinal Post School. We'll be launching our Green Recovery event in September. We'll also be doing our Climate Summit, which is our version of the Citizens' Assembly, in November, following the commitments that are made from COP26. And hopefully we'll continue with our ambition to rebuild a greener Hackney. And, for the sake of everyone in this room, we are going to continue being ambitious. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Note the annual update on progress with decarbonisation commitments and attached appendices. That noted? Noted with 2 objections. 3 objections, thank you. I've noted your proper objections. Item 10, renaming gardens formerly known as Casland Road Gardens. Can I invite Councillor Williams to introduce the report, please?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. 2021 was a shocking and disturbing year. As a cabinet, we met together to respond to the global reverberations of the pandemic, the murder of George Floyd and the subsequent removal of the statue of Colston in Bristol and the removal of the statue of Robert Milligan by owners the Canal and River Trust in Tower Hamlets. On the 9th of June 2020, the Mayor launched their review of legacies of the transatlantic trafficking of enslaved African people in Hackney's public realm. Through a process of engagement, we formed a community steering group made up of community leaders, cultural experts, historians and teachers. This group gave their time to ensure that the process was inclusive and sensitive. The following names are identified as part of the review: John Pass, Sir Robert Jeffrey. Both were assistants and investors in the Royal African Company, profiting from the transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans. The other names identified by the steering group were Francis Tisson, who was the absentee plantation owner and slave owner, and later Cecil John Rhodes was added to the list because he was one of the instigators of the racial structures in South Africa that enabled apartheid. As the first step of this work, the Mayor, members of the steering group and myself removed the nameplate at the former Castle Road Gardens just before Christmas, and a consultation was launched asking residents to identify an alternative name for the site. 4 names were chosen that represent African and African Caribbean heritage people in Homerton, South Hackney area. Frank Owusu, Celestine Edwards, who is an activist, editor and anti-racist journal of the Anti-Racist Journal Fraternity, and also Ralph Straker, a campaigner against sus laws and racial discrimination in education. The paper before you this evening is a culmination of that work, setting out the consultation results and the name for the gardens previously known as Castle Road Gardens. Today, I hope that you will all approve the name change. We look to adopt the name Kit Crowley Gardens, the name of a woman who was chosen by local residents as part of a consultation where 649 people participated. Mr. Speaker, let me tell you a little bit about Catherine Kit Crowley. She was born over 100 years ago to an English mother and a Bayesian father. Her experience of poverty and racism made her a role model. Sorry, let me start again. Her experience of poverty and racism made her a resilient woman where surviving childhood often relied on the goodness of neighbours, experiences that fired her strong sense of community spirit. She was described by those who nominated her as a role model for the Windrush generation and was known to many in this chamber. This piece of work is an exemplar of what can be done in partnership with local academics, historians and residents. It's true partnership working to reveal the hidden histories that are in plain sight and elevate those residents who have made a positive contribution to life in Hackney. I'll just close by saying a big thank you to all of those officers in the culture team, heritage services, parks, housing and engagement who all made this possible, and I'll ask members this evening to approve the name change to Kit Crowley Gardens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do members wish to debate the report? Councillor Odds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know what's got into people. Removing the name of a benefactor to this borough from somewhere where his family made an enormous contribution to, it's just beggars belief. It beggars belief. The man. So was George Washington. You're going to take his name off?
Please,
take him off Mount
Rushmore. Councillors, please speak through the chair.
Yeah,
Carry on, please.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, that defies. I mean, the fact that people are saying that he was a slave trader. Yes, we now realise that was terrible. There are lots of things that happened in the past that we now know were terrible. It doesn't mean we should discard our history and not acknowledge the people who have been benefactors. This man and his family were benefactors. We should recognise that fact. Yes, we can make a note of the fact that these days We realised that slave trading was wrong. We should never have taken part in it, as the government of the day did, and who was supported by all sorts of people. It was wrong. But nevertheless, the man was a benefactor, and to remove his name is terrible, in my opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Odds. Does anyone else wish to speak in the debate? Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Mr. Speaker, I first want to commend the work of officers and Councillor Williams, and through some of the work I was doing at the LGA, really proud that all Labour administrations decided to review any connotations within their power, what related to slavery. I don't detract of name changing or moving of any statues will change as such, but it's the debate that you have around that with the community that begins the changing and hopefully shaping of minds for the future. And anyone who has any doubt about slavery, I'd say, well, two things. One, you have to start being comfortable being uncomfortable, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about race. And I think, you know, any avid football armchair supporter like myself, Mr. Speaker, watched as hope came and just flooded through England in a way that so proud to be English I was. But so many of us knew that when those 3 young black men stood up and didn't make those penalties, unfortunately we knew the array of abuse went. So if you have any doubt, Mr. Speaker, why it's important to have these kinds of debates, have these types of changes, is knowing that unfortunately a minority within our society, anytime it goes wrong or even when it goes right, judges you by the colour of your skin, not the content of your heart, your mind, and all that you bring. There is no place for hate in this borough. There is no hate for racism. And we are absolutely proud to continue to stand up on behalf of our residents, despite those elected members who don't see fit to stand with us, Mr. Speaker.
Mayor Glanville.
It's almost impossible to follow Councillor Williams and Deputy Mayor Bramble, but what Councillor Odds was saying made me want to say something. I think it's really disappointing that in a process that has been so detailed that Councillor Williams talked about, so effectively a literature review, research for our archives, contextualising the contributions of Cass to the borough, and his onward legacy, but recognising that naming a public place after a renowned imperialist enslaver had no part in a modern borough. We didn't do that in a knee-jerk way. We started a year-long process that culminates tonight, and we decided to do something about that wound. We're not the only ones, Mr. Speaker. The Cass Foundation have been on their own journey. The halls of residence on Wells Street are now no longer the Sir John Cass halls. The Business School is reviewing it. Sanctuary Housing Association, who own many homes in the area, directly back to Cass and in the area. They're reviewing their buildings as well. So there's a considered community conversation and response in a respectful way that is not erasing our history, it's actually learning from it and making sure that we don't do it again and righting the wrongs of the past. And I think Kit Crowley is a really important example of a community activist, a public servant, someone known to young and old that contributed to this borough in a way that Sir John Cass never did. And that is what we're doing this evening. And I wholeheartedly support this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Councillor Williams, do you briefly want to respond?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I do. I do want to say that I made it really clear when I spoke that what we haven't done is to erase anything. What we have done, however, is to place the nameplate of the former Catherine Road Gardens in the Hackney Museum. We will also be erecting an information board at the gardens to contextualise the story of Sir John Cass and how he made his money. What we have done by carrying out this work is to reveal the hidden history that has been in our plain sight, right under our noses all of this time, and many, many people who live near the former Catherine Road Gardens, the now Kit Crowley Gardens, have no idea about Sir John Cass and how he made his money. Those residents are the ones who now know about him and want to change the narrative. I just want to, if I might, quote my colleague across the chamber, Councillor Mette Coban. Your reference sounds like student politics, and I'm not going to entertain it in the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. And the members agree to the proposal?
Agreed.
Yes, what is your point, Councillor Odd?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As someone whose grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins were brutally murdered by the Nazis, I strongly object to Deputy Mayor Bramble's implication that I am a racist, and I would expect an apology for that.
I didn't hear Deputy Mayor Bramble suggest that you were a racist.
Thank you,
So
Mr. Speaker.
you've made your point, but I heard nothing of the sort. Can the members agree to rename? Can members agree to rename Castle Road Gardens as Kit Crowley Gardens and install new signage and information boards at site? Agreed?
Agreed.
Right, agreed with 3 against. We now move on to the corporate plan. Mayor Glanville, could you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm only able to introduce the report because of the hard work of council officers. We've been thanking a lot of people in the community and our public sector partners this evening, but this corporate plan brings to life the contribution of council officers from the very top of the organisation to the front line. And the email that Ian Williams and Councillor Lynch sent today, I think really profoundly around mental health, was a powerful moment for me in thinking about the resilience of our organisation and how we support our staff. And it was a pleasure to join Ian in the Senior Management Network and be able to thank them today and your powerful words, Ian, about their contributions, and that they can see published in the public domain what they have been doing over not just the course of the last year, but beyond that, and setting out a plan for the future. We all know, we've been talking about it tonight, that the coronavirus pandemic is the greatest challenge the borough has faced in a generation. And the reality is that when we last looked at our corporate plan, we were only 4 months into what has now become, I think, 2-year, perhaps longer crisis. And at that time when we were reviewing it, it was a fast, dirty review. It was a look at what we'd done in that first lockdown and that first period. And it was an attempt to recognise that our ambitions in our manifesto, our ambitions in the corporate plan were changed forever. And we published that and we had it, I don't think it made it to full council, but it did make it to cabinet. I think it's really important that we have a document like this that's effectively a state of the council, state of the borough annual moment where we look at everything that we've been doing. I don't need to go into all the work we've been doing with the voluntary sector because we've heard about it so vividly earlier this evening, nor the work that we've done with our social care and health system. I don't need to list the residents that we've lost or the contributions that all of those volunteers have been made, but they're all in this report and contextualised by so much more. It's fair to say that the 10 years of austerity, the cuts that we have been facing as an organisation, the impact of the economic shocks of coronavirus are likely to shape this council and our borough for many years to come. Take universal credit, that's increased from 13,000 applicants in March 2020 to 35,000 this June, and we're only now seeing, obviously, the slow taper to furlough. And the government increased universal credit by the £20 a week because they knew that statutory sick pay and that the benefit system could not support residents of this country through the pandemic. Rather than learning the lessons from that and restoring a proper safety net, they've refused to restore the £20 a week. In this chamber, we passed a motion very clearly saying that we were against the social and security system. We've seen food bank and unemployment use increase, and it is desperately sad that we've seen young people claiming unemployment benefit at the rate of 11% now. We've, though, continued to try and deliver our manifesto and our values through this period. So we've been pledging, as I said earlier, our work around no recourse to public funds and our work with vaccination around rough sleepers. I mentioned the work we're doing with our arts and cultural organisations. In a year like this, we've still been able to do the big strategic thinking, whether it's ageing well or the co-production with Young Futures. delivering for young and old alike ambitious strategies that will shape the future of this borough for many years to come. Everything that Councillor Coban said, so much of that has been done during the pandemic, whether it's the intellectual work behind the data analysis or the frontline response to rebuild greener Hackney. And as I said earlier, that work on rough sleeping. I really welcome the National Food Strategy and Henry Dimbleby, a resident of this borough's contribution to it, and I'll be proud to join him tomorrow evening to celebrate that work. I think he has been one of the unsung heroes actually of this government, constantly making the case back to government that their support has not been enough, it's not been consistent enough, and I think with Marcus Rashford have been a dynamic campaigning duo on food poverty across the country. And I just put it in context. When we went into the crisis of the second wave at Christmas, we were allocated £1.1 million to support food poverty over the Christmas holiday period and the subsequent half term. We've been now allocated just slightly less of that than that for the whole summer holidays, Mr. Speaker. Lessons could have been learned, funding could have been provided. I'm really pleased in the supplement to Hackney Life that we outline a summer of play, a summer of cultural activities, but also a comprehensive response to food poverty. And I thank Councillors Kennedy, Woodley and Deputy Mayor Bramble for their tireless work on that. You'd also see in there 10 years of Young Hackney, and Councillor Williams was there at the start of that journey, and I know she continues to support it, the work that Deputy Mayor Bramble and Councillor Woodley do, and the 40-year anniversary of our Adventure Playground movement, all some of the many ways that we want to support our young people. I'm just going to bring this to a close, Mr. Speaker, and say we've outlined 7 priorities in this corporate plan for the Council: reducing poverty, rebuilding an inclusive economy, tackling the housing crisis and homelessness, supporting children and young people to thrive, building community wellbeing, tackling health inequalities, reducing harm and violent crime, and yes, Councillor, stopping the climate emergency. We knew none of that would be easy. There would be no quick fixes. There'd be no returning to normal. But Mr. Speaker, the hard work in this document shows our ambition to rebuild a fairer and greener local economy, support our communities, and ensure that coming out of this pandemic, when this pandemic finally leaves us, this borough will be better than it was at the start. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I really welcome this corporate plan up.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. I didn't really want to spend any time on this report. We've got an important motion on planning. You have 1 minute each. Councillor Steinberger.
There's one thing I can agree with the Mayor, and we will always support wherever there's benefit cuts. We do not support benefit.
Is wasting our time, so please carry on.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I withdraw the repetition. On page 48 of the report, or 102, if you're looking at the numbers at the bottom, you refer to knife crime being reduced by 32.5%. I don't know how you get those figures, but it's a bit like saying traffic's been reduced because our counters haven't counted more cars. They can't count more cars because they're going so slowly, they can't count them. You look around you and look at all the reports that knife crime is horrendous. I don't know where you get this reduction of 32.5%. I only wish it were true, but it's horrendous. And until we get these knives off the street, I'm sorry, but I cannot support.
All right, thank
something
you,
that uses that
Councillor.
statistic.
Mayor Glanville, do you want to respond briefly?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we've gone from student politics to a Radio 4 game show in the course of one evening. These are the statistics. They're from the Met. They're from our close community safety partnership. There is a detailed set of the operations that Councillor Alain Chalmers and I have been working with the police on. You'll have seen the police's days of action. You'll see their increase in numbers because of the tireless work of Mayor Khan to return policing to the capital after a decade of cuts, and that is now starting to bear fruit in terms of the statistics you see. I am not complacent, though. I'm definitely not complacent, and there are statistics London-wide around young people that have lost their lives to knife crime, and I completely acknowledge them. And I'm also completely conscious that there, by the grace of God, does Hackney go with some of those issues, and something terrible could be happening while we're sat here. So I'm not in any way complacent, and that is why we're so resolute on working with our communities on our community safety response. And there are pages and pages and pages of that work and new activities and new strategic direction, whether it's on drugs, whether it's on new community safety partnerships, and the work with the BRU, and making sure that we have the very best possible response to youth violence. But also, I want to make sure that we remember that most young people are not involved in any form of crime. They're more likely to be victims of crime. And I pay tribute to a weekend of sport, both at Stoke Newington and the Marshes, where the police sponsored activities with people like Hackney Wick FC and Stoke Newington School. And it was an absolute privilege to be there with councillor colleagues. I just want to thank Councillor Steinberg, because you have been resolute on the issue of benefit cuts through the last decade that I recall it being debated in this chamber. And on that, you have stood up for Hackney, and I am incredibly grateful. I do believe in Hat Zola. I've probably spent more time with Hat Zola than anyone in a senior leadership role at this council. I believe in what they do. I'm always wishing to support them, and that's why I've worked so hard to make sure with Councillor Cockburn and Councillor Burke that they're not impacted by some of these changes. I'd just like, if you'd indulge me for 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker, it came up last time, but it's not come up this evening, and it is vital to our recovery that we mentioned the cyber attack in October. It has had a devastating impact on the ability of the council to do some of the very basic transactions that I know so many of our vulnerable residents rely on. Every day we're rebuilding those systems, focusing on the most vulnerable first, and making sure that things like benefits payments, council tax, business rates, and other things are processed. It's an incredibly important piece of work. I'd like to thank Audit Committee and Scrutiny for highlighting that journey. It is not over. It's going to take many more months, but we are beginning to turn the corner on systems recovery. I thank all the council officers that have been a part of that, and I know that so many residents need those services to be back and fully functioning, and there's no more important duty of us as a council on the political and officer side to make sure that that happens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Can members agree to note the contents of this report? Yes, all agreed to note it, apart from 3 members of the opposition. Thank you. Item 12. We are running a little late, so we need to try and be as concise and lucid as possible. Appointment of Chief Executive, Head of Paid Service and Returning Officer. You have the report. Do members wish to debate it? No. Will the council agree? Councillor Odds.
To debate it, but I just think the committee made a very poor decision in not appointing our current acting chief executive.
Thank you, Councillor Odds. Will the council agree to the following recommendations? Approve the appointment of Mark Carroll to the position of Chief Executive, Head of Paid Service, Returning Officer of London Borough of Hackney from October 2021, and delegate authority to the Director of Legal and Governance Services to take any further action necessary to give effect to the contents of this report. Is that agreed? Agreed. We've agreed it, Councillor Steinberger. Oh, you disagree? All right.
time, because this borough is so multicultural, and we've got somebody in here who knows what's going on. It's a sin to done what we've done. So
all right, you've made your point. I think that, as I've said,
This is entirely inappropriate.
I think, as I've said, the procedure was gone through and it was.
So it's entirely inappropriate what the opposition is saying.
Yes.
They are revealing, or they are seeking to reveal information about who applied for a job, which they should not be doing, and they are in grave danger of being reported to Senate City.
All right, well, we don't want, we're late as it is. I think, as I've said, we will take account of what you've said, and if there's any issue that the monitoring officer wishes to raise, you will raise it. Now, I'm not taking anything further. Agenda item 13, section 85, Local Government Act 1972, resolution to extend 6-month rule. Members are requested to note the revised recommendation, including names of any additional councillors. Content of the report remains otherwise unchanged. Members wish to debate the report? Can we agree it? Agreed. Thank you. Item 14, motion on planning. Councillor Race, would you please introduce the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. Thank you for hearing this motion, which concerns the upcoming planning bill based on the recent white paper proposed by this Tory government. The government claims that the changes they propose to the planning policy of this country will lay the foundations for a brighter future, providing more homes for young people and creating better quality neighbourhoods and homes across the country. Members, nothing could be further from the truth. As stated in the motion, these proposed planning changes are fundamentally flawed. In reality, the bill's changes will strip local residents of their rights to participate in local planning decisions. It will ride roughshod over the ability even for local elected representatives to participate and be heard in the planning process. It will scrap Section 106 funding that delivers local affordable housing, including new social homes, and in lieu of any national funding for council houses, this will likely lead to fewer new affordable homes. It will hand even more power to developers by setting up zones in which anything goes, and it will centralise all planning gain, ensuring central government redistribution far removed from local participation and priorities. Hackney Council has a proud history of resident involvement in proactive local planning, putting the voices and the needs of local residents at the heart of planning policy. In July last year, members approved LP 33, our new local plan that puts sustainable growth and development at the heart of our planning regime. As Councillor Nicholson said of the plan at the time, it's a plan that encompasses ambitious and step-changing policies that enables the delivery of Hackney's community strategy, Hackney, a place for everyone. LP 33 was built on extensive community engagement and puts people at the heart of planning. It sits alongside many supporting documents, including ambitious community-led area plans, including for Shoreditch, Dalston, Hackney Central and Stamford Hill. As local council for Hoxton East and Shoreditch, I just saw how much effort went into developing the Shoreditch plan in partnership with the local community. From market stalls to events with TRAs, council officers met with many people and organisations to hear their thoughts, seek their input and feed their views into the plan. This new planning framework proposed by the government is the very opposite of this approach. As such, it will fail to deliver homes, it has no vision for decarbonisation of existing stock, and it will lead to the wrong buildings in the wrong place with the wrong infrastructure. As such, it has attracted condemnation from many quarters. The Royal Town Planning Institute has criticised the planner-bashing rhetoric and made the case for considered planning that includes the voice of residents and communities, warning that the permitted development rights plans will open the doors to further development of modern-day slums. The Royal Institute of British Architects slammed the proposals, criticising Secretary of State Robert Jenrick's approach as deregulation, further stating that the shameful proposals do almost nothing to guarantee the delivery of affordable, well-designed and sustainable homes. The Campaign to Protect Rural England has criticised the proposals, saying the key acid test for the planning reforms is community involvement, and on first reading it's still not clear how this will work under a zoning system. Shelter, a housing charity, has criticised the proposals, saying it would be irresponsible to scrap a system that has become vital for delivering social housing without proof of concept. And Sadiq Khan has branded the proposals a disaster for London that will ride roughshod over communities and locally elected representatives. Members, it is quite a feat to produce proposals so bad that this array of organisations are opposed to it. But that is what Robert Jenrick and this government have done. There is one group who are in favour of the plans, however, big developers. In fact, the government's press release included a supportive quote from the CEO of one developer, so it's clear that this bill is nothing more than a big developer's charter, sweeping away the concept of community involvement in planning and removing one of the last funding streams for affordable housing. We know that the Conservative Party and big developers are very friendly. It's a matter of public record that developers donated £11 million to the Tory party in a single year around 25% of all donations to that party. But it also represents centralisation at its very worst, an assault on local democracy and accountability, an attitude that Whitehall knows what's best for residents in Hackney, in Hartlepool and in Hale. We know differently. Residents and elected representatives have a far better idea of what is best for the local communities than someone sitting in an office in SW1A. Members, I ask you to support this motion, send a message to government on behalf of our residents that these planning proposals are not welcome and they're not good enough.
By Claire Matley, which for the first time, actually, Mr. Speaker, could I be allowed to speak without introduction, please?
I think there's an echo. Carry on, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you. So the Town and Country Planning Act actually established the concept of planning permission. It wasn't just enough to own the land, and local authorities were given a really quite wide-ranging range of powers. In addition to actually approving planning proposals, we could redevelop land ourselves, we could use compulsory purchase orders. The Act has been amended a few times since 1947, but it's still there. It's enabling councils to do good local things, to plan for what we need, to resist inappropriate development, but that's what this government doesn't like. They want to tinker with the planning system, but it's not the planning system that's broken, it's the housing delivery system. There are 1 million homes that have been... There are 1 million homes in the UK that have been given planning permission but not built. That's where they should be looking. What everyone knows that it is that in Hackney we need more affordable, well-designed and sustainable homes, and the proposals in the White Paper will do absolutely nothing to deliver those. Instead, they want to take power away from local government, from the citizens of Hackney. They want to take away the money that's currently allocated. They want to scrap Section 106, which accounted for 49% of all affordable housing last year. And they want to get their hands on the community infrastructure levy, which is currently ring-fenced, and use it
which the planning system has. The Section 106, this council here can go into an area where it's 90% dominant of one community and just chuck on them with the Section 106 what they like. Same as what they do with other stuff. Section 106 is meant for community. We are asking communities who are struggling to make money, they should do a Section 106. If you look about the neighborhood forum, I believe this is the only council in the whole England that refused the neighbourhoods forum. And what was the reason? There was two people who formed another one, and they themselves voted against it. So they had 0 votes. The other ones had 2,500 votes. And no, it's just 2 applications. But they themselves voted against it. But there still is 2 applications. So basically, this is the last council I would trust when it comes to planning. If you have a look in Haringey, what they've done for the community, allowed 2-story when they didn't allow anything before that, without all the headache. And here the opposite, the amount of headaches I have with simple planning, a school in Emmers Park, not allowed. Where should the children learn? On the road, on the LTNs? You're not allowing basic planning. Every Monday and Tuesday, we're having to deal with basic planning issues. I support the government all the way on this, and they should, even if they don't take it away from other boroughs, from Hackney, they should definitely take it away. And this is what it goes back to the fact, you do not understand communities. I'm afraid to say, if you look at on the whole situation of planning, it's an absolute disgrace what you've done.
Thank you, Councillor Steinberger. Councillor Nicholson.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was going to kind of sort of start, and actually I think I will remain on track and start in the way that I'd intended, which is that I don't think there's any other council service that you could describe as being like Marmite. You either love it or you loathe it, and it's pretty much split even Stevens, with those that love it, and as we've just heard, those that loathe it. I would be deeply, deeply concerned, Mr. Speaker, if indeed what we have just heard from the other side of the chamber was a reality. Can I just reassure this chamber, Mr. Speaker, that what's actually been played out in the community in Stamford Hill over the last 4 years has been a nationally recognised example of best practice participatory plan making led by a planning authority with the community. And by community, Mr. Speaker, we are talking about all parts of a community. And that recognition has come because of the effort and because of a principle. And that principle was eloquently described by both Councillor Race and Councillor Hanson in their introduction to this motion. And they were absolutely right to say that this legislation, should it come forward in the form that it is being proposed to come forward, will withdraw that right of the citizen to participate in the plan making, the planning determination process, and indeed take away that ability for local government, our council, who actually understand the needs of a growing community and how a planning system in the right hands, the hands of a council, can shape a place and ensure that people are supported as the population grows, as the communities get larger,
can you conclude your remarks?
Economy grows alongside it. Mr. Speaker, just to kind of place on record that from the administration's perspective, we fully support this motion, and we fully note Councillor Race, Councillor Hanson, what is being brought forward in terms of the resolutions. And we also fully acknowledge, and I'm sure Councillor Race and Councillor Hanson, you wouldn't mind me saying this, that Councillor Stotts, who unfortunately is unable to be with us this evening, who is our Council's Chair of Planning, I know in spirit, shall we say, he fully supports this particular motion as well. He too has great concerns about the future of participatory planning, community engagement and community participation should this legislation come forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, actually, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Councillor Ott. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hold on. Is that a point of information or a point of order, Councillor Adams? I don't think it'll be necessary, but if we can agree to that, is that agreed?
Agree.
Thank you. Councillor Odds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This motion is extremely misguided. We're talking about a white paper. I don't think there's ever been a white paper that has become an act without being changed. It's undoubted there are certain parts of the white paper that will be changed and that are wrong. Nobody's perfect. However, Councillor Hanson said it in one. The Town and Country Planning Act was passed in 1947. Although it has been amended along the way, the time has come for root and branch change. No government is going to abolish the planning system. That's furthest from the minds of anybody. What they want to do is to strip out parts of the nanny state, which are so liked by the socialists. To give power back to the people that own their own houses and want to do what they want with them within reason, as long as their neighbours don't object. This motion is just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and I beg to oppose it.
Thank you, Councillor Odds. Mayor Glanville, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I always thank Councillor Odds for setting me up for a robust response. I support the motion and thank Councillors Race and Hanson for tabling it this evening. Undoubtedly, there is a crisis in this country, a housing crisis of supply, affordability and quality. What is not to blame is the planning system. It has served us well. It can be reformed in a way that continues to support citizen involvement, good plan making, high quality and everything else. That challenge and that crisis is around house prices, 71% up in the last 5 years in Hackney, homelessness rising, TA placements rising, and the instability of the private rented sector. This does nothing to solve that, and it's really telling. You talked about people that owned their home, that own their land, and those that want to develop, and property owners and developers, as Councillor Ray said, they're the people that are going to benefit from this planning reform, not those waiting in temporary accommodation, not those that fear permitted development rights. And permitted development rights across this country have failed. They've allowed landlords to turn former office buildings into homes without planning permission, leading to poor quality rabbit hutch homes and no affordable housing, and allowing a profiteering across South East England of the homelessness crisis. And yet they badge all this up in yet let's build beautiful. The tower blocks of Stevenage and Harlow are not beautiful. They're filled with some of the most vulnerable people in this country because of the actions of previous housing and planning ministers in this country. You saw what happens when you have an unregulated market, and why we've had to take a prosecution out, as Councillor Moore set out, in Hackney Downs ward around people that were pushing people into the arches. Rather than giving councils the funding they need to build new social homes, rather than prioritising the ending of Section 21, while giving councils the power to licence private rented sector, or while giving Mayor Khan his mandate to deliver rent controls, they're going for the planning system again, Mr. Speaker. And we've got a good planning record here of building out 90% of residential planning applications that have been approved. 90% are approved, as Deputy Mayor, Councillor Bell said, and as Deputy Mayor Nicholson said, a big promotion there this evening. 25% though of applications have not been built out. It's a failure of people to build out their planning applications, not the granting of planning permission that's at fault. Mr. Speaker, I will finish on the Section 106 point. Section 106 has served this borough incredibly well. It's how we have navigated the pains of growth and change and invested in the borough's infrastructure. That is what is helping us deliver the improvements in your own wards, Councillor Steinberger, in terms of Springfield Park. The work that we're doing around skills and jobs and the approval for Hackney Works funding, long-term borough infrastructure abilities to Marshall, Sill and Section 106 will be taken away from us. And all of the plan making, Shoreditch, Hackney Central, Dalston, Stamford Hill, Child Friendly Borough SPD, the work on biodiversity and sustainability, all at risk by these reforms. And they don't link up, Mr. Speaker, at Whitehall. You've got an environment bill that talks about nature recovery, and you've got a planning system that seeks to deregulate. We're going to get net zero without the tools to do it. It's absolute madness, Mr. Speaker. So I hope this evening we'll be joining Labour colleagues in Parliament to vote through this motion, a vote that the Tories abstained from on their own white paper, which I think shows just how much Conservative MPs don't support this work, even if their councillors here in the chamber do so. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Theo, we're going to finish by 10. Get ready. Councillor Race. Oh, hold on. Did you wish to make a final contribution? Yes, Councillor.
I just want to say that I will be strongly supporting the motion. I thank you both for the work that you've done on this. And I will be supporting the motion purely because of one word, and that is disenfranchisement. It's been my great honour as a new councillor to listen to residents, to be on the doorstep and to be at the end of an email listening to residents. And again, what I hear is people say they feel uninvolved, unlistened to in the issues that surround them. For us to approve the paper as it is at the moment, for us not to object and to not be standing by the motion would undermine our residents and would seek to further disenfranchise them. So that's why I'll be voting for the motion this evening.
Well said. Councillor Race, do you wish to respond?
Thank you very quickly, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members, for the debate. And I just wanted to echo Councillor Sizer now, just in closing. I think at the core of this is a question of power. This represents, this bill that will come from the white paper represents a removal of power from local people and from local elected representatives, and it crystallises it in the hands of developers and central government. It shouldn't be allowed, and I hope that people will vote in favour of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Race. Can we have a show of hands? Those in favour of the motion? Thank you. Those against?
Can I ask?
No, you can't ask when we're having a vote taken. Any abstentions? Right, that's carried by a substantial majority. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Is this a point of information, Councillor Steinberger?
Part of this, I want to make sure that the government who sent this, they are aware that it's only a Labour motion, nothing to do with that.
That motion is a council motion, Councillor Steinberger, as I'm sure the monitoring officer would tell you. Right, we move now to the final item, which is dates of future meetings. The future dates are the 20th of October 2021, the 26th of January 2022, the 23rd of February 2022. Can we agree those? Agreed. We're now coming to the end of the meeting, way before 10 o'clock. No need for any extensions at all, although if this were a bar, Councillor Adams, I'd probably think it was in order. I'd like to thank you all for general good humour. We must all show tolerance and understanding, and when we disagree, we should disagree with a degree of respect. I wish you all a very happy summer break, and we'll see you back here very soon. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding for the Speaker of the London Borough of Hackney.